I carry great concern about the award of PPE orders to the Haleses and brethren businesses. The Haleses are, of course, in control of everything, so the money and the allocation of orders, so it's not too obvious to the outside world that they're in control, isn't too obvious, but as you dig and delve, because we have to, I mean, when we consider this statistic, the average, when you look at the value of orders that have been awarded to brethren businesses during the crisis and after, totaling, I understand now, 3 billion, but based on 2.6 billion, which is proven, and there's a lot that we haven't seen, that means that the average for every man, woman and child in the Plymouth Brethren, or exclusive brethren worldwide, for government contracts for COVID orders is over £60,000 each. To put that in context, in comparison, if everyone in the UK got the same, then the total value is 4 trillion and 80 billion, or 2 years of total UK GDP. So there has to be some high up links in the governments of the UK and Australia. And I owe it to the, if nobody else, I owe it to the British taxpayer to look into this on behalf of the country, because this is mega bucks. At the same time, these people are trying to ruin my life, run me out of money. They got me into the prison cells for a night, so they're not nice people. And they've been very, very insidious the way they've undermined my integrity and taken my business and my family, my social circle, etc., all away from me. At the same time, the British government are handing them these incredibly lucrative contracts on enormous profits. And I think other investigators underestimate the amount of profit that the brethren make through dealing with, by buying this stuff in Australia. Yeah, there is global plastics were involved in manufacturing. Although they're a UK firm, I believe they manufacture in China. So it takes a lot of digging and delving. My whole situation involving my life in the PBCC has taken 6 years of almost forensic investigation, going down an interminable labyrinth of hidden trusts and all stuff. And the people that work together in the religion against you, as came out in my court case. It's not good that all these 55,000 people gang up on an individual and crush him through sheer weight of numbers. Well, if these people are also multi-billionaires, which they are, I mean, as a group, I happen to know that they're worth at least £30 billion. Well, what chance does a guy called Lance Christie have against this enormously wealthy organisation who buys superb mansions? There's a whole social strata in there. They're not all like that. And they're the ones that I want to empower by giving them correct, factual, evidenced information so that they raise questions of the hierarchy. And quite simply, all it needs is repentance. The hierarchy needs repentance and own up to the truth to their own, to the brethren, and to those they've been excommunicated, because the suffering and the anguish of soul, the heartache that's going on right now because they split up families, they've kept my grandkids, lovely kids, all the lot of them, I love them to bits, away from me for 6 years. And yet the government are just handing them money, hand over fist. So it needs a complete investigation into what the Conservative government's been doing in the UK by opening this VIP lane and allowing lucrative contracts to be awarded without any tendering process. Yeah, it's very easy to favour your friends, isn't it? And that's what the hierarchy do in the brethren. If you're in the hierarchy and you know what's going on, you're favoured. And then you get gifts from brethren care meetings, monthly care meetings from around the world if you're high up there and validated by Bruce Hales. So it's only fair, only right that people who have got the capacity to look into things should do so. And we really do thank organisations, media organisations like Open and Candid and the Times newspaper and others who are looking into this and putting in terminable time in to ferret out just what's really happening. And the brethren minister transparency. So the rank and file have got to be transparent, even to confessing their sins to priests, because it's on their conscience and they want to make a clean breast of things. And yet the leadership and the hierarchy are covering up billions of pounds of business that they transact with the governments. So the same rules should apply to all. And if the British citizen, middle class, have to be righteous and declare your tax and declare all your earnings so that there's nothing hidden, nothing dark, nothing murky, so should the flipping hierarchy of probably one of the most wealthy religions in the UK. I don't say we strike a match against the Catholics, but I'm not sure that Mormons and Latter-day Saints are stashing up the billions that the exclusive brethren or Plymouth Brethren Christian Church are. But I don't know. But what I'm saying applies to cults in general, or extreme high discipline sects, whatever you want to call them. Same difference in my book. So as Open and Candid, and I suggest that every member of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church looks at the Open and Candid website, which declares, I believe very accurately, what's happening in the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. And they say that it's led by Sydney-based businessman Bruce Hales. It's a tiny sect with just over 50,000 members worldwide, located in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, United States and Canada, with a small number of followers in Argentina, the Caribbean, France, Switzerland, Italy, Germany and Sweden. Membership in the UK, about 15,000 or 16,000. And they've amassed incredible wealth. They're described as a secret and controversial sect. So they list the $1 billion mystery involving Medco solutions. MedPro has already been exposed. And it didn't even exist. Medco didn't even exist at the start of the pandemic. And then Tucson Global, Test and Traced, have recruited 13 former senior executives from UK HSA, the Test and Trace team. And, Wiley's of Carnforth, Lancaster, and the Haleses in Sydney are using these worldlies to lead their businesses. And then UBT, Universal Business Team, the major fundraiser for PBCC, are turning over almost £100 million in the UK alone, but was sold to a company with no assets. So these things need investigating. And we owe it to everybody. And I won't be popular for saying this with Bruce Hales and Garth Christie and the Sydney brethren who slam down the phone on me when I try and ring them. But the truth needs to be told. It doesn't matter whether I'm popular or unpopular. I'm just Lance Christie, and I insist that the brethren should practice what they preach. That is transparency and accountability. Shouldn't be 80% of them that have to be transparent and 20% dark. They should run right through the whole organisation. And if you're in the dark class, confess it in your assembly and cast yourself on your brethren to sort you out. You know, that's the fairest way. And if it's breaching the law or breaching the tax laws, hand yourself over to the police. They'll be fair. I found them to be fair myself. And then, as it goes on, the Hales family are the real COVID winners. Over 3 billion of the COVID contracts awarded to brethren members across the world, 85% of which went to companies linked to this family of church leaders, the family of the elect vessel, the Paul of our day, the man of God, Bruce Hales. And it speaks in scripture of deceiving, if possible, even the elect. So maybe this is what's happening, that people we should regard as elect have been deceived. And maybe it goes to the top, maybe it goes to Boris Johnson, the PM of Australia. These things need to come out. We've got elections coming up next year in the UK. So people want to vote for an honest, upright government that stand for morals and stand for justice, stand for truth. Any government that's hiding stuff, even down to expenses, is corrupt. It's just corruption. We've got to be righteous in all our affairs. It's quite simple. That's what the brethren teach. Jolly well practice what you preach. And then it commends James Di Fiore of Blackball Podcasts in Canada for inviting one of their employees, Damien Hasty, to present. And then it says, sect companies and their meeting rooms are all fenced in with the gate closed. Welcome to Carnforth, Lancashire, where the PBCC trade and pray together in their own charter village. And then, under the UK BDH 100, the 100 companies owned by members of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church that won either UK government, regional government contracts or included in local and national government recommended lists, totaling £2.6 billion of the business. Unispace Global, Santi Global, Medco Solutions, Stereolab Services, GDC Healthcare, AES Industrial, Inivos, Lindum Packaging, Origin Packaging, Halco Europe, Bronze Architecture, Clandyboy, Belfast, Okura Healthcare, Fairfield Care, CMT Group, Tower Supplies, Specialist Door Solutions, Arrow County Supplies, Techniclean Supply, Acora, Oscar Care, Aero Healthcare, Agile Medical, Selkent Medical, Gift Finder, Creative Activity, Udale Corporation, Backer Workwear and Safety, East Point, Kingsbury Press, Streamline, Clipspringer, Centrado Trading, Hornbeck, Toffelin, Innovacare, however you pronounce it, Archer Marketing, Blue Leaf, Castle Industrial Supplies, Bryson Products, Springfield Supplies and Projects, Core Care, Global, CID Products, Carlton Packaging, Orsagel, Clad Safety, Knaresborough, Harrogate, Oak Dean Services, Denka UK, CPP Trading Group, SMI International Group, Hallmark Workwear, Ascot Signs, Total Protection UK, Lion Safety, Southgate Packaging, Medaco, Onyx SafePro, Nexon Healthcare, Protec Healthcare, Acopia Group, AUK Suppliers, Love Air, Oxford Safety, Denmore Press, TGS UK, AST Global Sourcing, Castle EU, Harmony Fire, Eclipse Furniture, Springfield Business, Heathbrook Workwear, All Group LLP, Bridge Valley Group, Selmac, Innertech, Tudor Environmental, Eureka Global, McKinley's Group, Progarm, Lapwing, Plus Packaging, Rhino Sensory, Cottonmount, Durafloor, Stonegate Tooling, Otterdene, VIC Group, Slater Safety, Brookhouse, Venter Global, Blake Envelopes, V12 Footwear, Olson's Group, Stronghold Global, Chippenham, Denmore Protection, Wearertech, STS, Flame Pro Global, Centura Group. There we are. And Open and Candid also recommend Veracity Breaking Brethren, a Canadian documentary which airs the views of a number of ex-members who've left the Brethren, including my friend Dennis Ragg from Toronto, a wonderful man who's come right through Jim Taylor, Simonton era. Lost his family, of course, but one or two came back. And Richard Marsh and a whole spread of ex-brethren who've had a really hard time. And these brethren inside need to look at these documentaries, websites, and understand what's going on. Otherwise, they're just pawns on Hales' chessboard. It's an interesting thing that just when I was leaving, I was being shut up, I was in touch with the brethren in Spain who were being closed down because they weren't making enough money. And a letter went out signed by 4 brothers in Spain. One was Michel Klein, who was in touch with me about his affairs. A German man who married a Spanish girl, went to live in Spain to help the small meeting there. Then he had to move countries back again, poor man. And he was heartbroken, really, but very brave. And a letter went out to all the assemblies, which was read out in assemblies, about Mr. Hales visiting Terrassa. And Michel's name was on the bottom. And I was in touch with him. I said, oh, we had your letter read out this morning. He said, what? I don't know anything about it. So people's names are used on documents to make it sound as though they are backing up what the leader is deciding when they don't know anything about it. Well, how cowardly is that? If Bruce Hales is saying that these are the rules for the Terrassa meetings or any other meetings, he should put his own name on it. He shouldn't tell people what to do and hide, and nor should he tell people what to do in UK businesses and hide behind them and squirrel away most of the money. Certainly not. So we want to get these people out into the open, speaking the truth, make them accountable. So, and then there's an article on influencing elections, another one on the Beckenham charity, 5 trustees of the Albacore Gospel Hall Trust charity, and then the Times report on the COVID contracts awarded to the Brethren, and then an article on the Conservative MP Michelle Donnellan, who I'm coming on to in a minute, with her family ties to the Turners in Chippenham. And yeah, 400-year-old pub. And then testing, 100 million, 200 million, COVID testing. That's the latest thing through the Frizzell Sterilab of Harrogate and Knaresborough. And then Grace Trust, Brethren Charity Grace Trust reaps the award of the pandemic. The latest accounts from Grace Trust show an increase in income of some 25 million for 2020, driven by PPE trading. I'm not right up to date, but it's probably, I understand they're restructuring the Grace Trust, maybe because it's come under a bit of scrutiny, I don't know. And then there's a whole lot of videos on the brethren, on the ex-brethren, which the brethren need to understand. If the brethren are ruining lives and causing distress and suicides, heartbreak, by breaking up families, they shouldn't deny it. They should look into it. Oh, is something we're doing causing people to feel depressed? In the court case, they didn't seem to understand that they might have caused me some distress by taking my family away and shoving me out of my house, shoving me out of my business, taking away my social circle, taking away my religion. They didn't seem to have any empathy or compassion or understanding that it might cause me upset. I'm a father back in his day. My father was a broken man. I've had to use millions of pounds of my own to get to this point. My father didn't have it, he worked in the bank. So I would have been crushed if I hadn't had a very successful business. I've just about got through. Well, they shouldn't do that to anyone. Not to me or anybody. If people aren't worth a few million and they're pitched up against 55,000 PBCC members, they haven't got a chance. So get real. So alienators use half-truth statements, an element of truth, which includes deliberate distortions and omission of information. So, if you're an alienator, if that finds you out, own up to it. Hand yourself in. Alienators should not run religions, absolutely. Whether it's your own local meeting, a subdivision, any church, UK, whether you're accredited by the universal leader or not, alienators are not acting like Christians because they're hiding the truth. And this is what came out in my court case, that the brethren had given the police a very one-sided story. Nobody had thought, for instance, when Garth writes a letter to me when he's shutting me up, copied into 29 senior brethren in Leeds and around the north of England, I wrote a reply, so my KC questions them, but this is a reply. Did you not think to show the letter to the police that this was a reply to? And, I've said it before, at the top, appeal to Garth Christie for fairness and justice. And yet they call that harassment and try and bring weight of numbers in to crutch me in court. So, no alienators. I can honestly say that my motive is to get the truth out. And the whole point of the case was that if the truth hurts, we still need to know it. You don't hide the truth from anybody. If the world has become, because of the legal system and prisons, all about ducking and diving and hiding away from the truth because I can't be open and honest about what I'm doing, what my motives are, the world's a very bad place and religion's a bad place. So we need to address it. It's quite simple. So Michelle Donnellan, Minister of the Conservative government in the UK, is a very interesting person. I've written to her twice. Second time her secretary said that she would dictate a reply and come back to me. But then she jumped jobs. So government minister, I think she was 1 day or 2 days in the education minister job. And then Boris was resigned the next day. So she did as well. And that was half. And then she was Minister for Culture and Sport, I think, which includes religion. So I wrote to her in December 2022 and included an article, Does Truth Matter? And then now she switched jobs again. So I never got a reply. I think whether it's in business or any walk of life, if you're a good person, you stay and see a job through. You don't jump around like a politician, shut things down and mess around. And if you're married to a Brethren member, that needs declaring round the housetops. Or a member that's just left the Brethren, because that is a very likely source of information, at least. You might say a hidden link between the government and the PBCC. So I think Michelle Donnellan, with all due respect to government officials who run the country, needs to be investigated. And I'm not saying that in any unkind way, we all fail, but we just want truth and honesty. I used to have a lot to do with Jim Turner. That's Tom's grandfather. And I've had a lot to do recently with John Turner. That's her father's uncle. So I know the Turner family pretty much inside out. When I rang Ben Turner a couple of years ago, he slams the phone down on me. Thanks, mate. I'm here I stand for truth, but I'm not here to harm you. But I am here to courteously request that you, and respectfully request that you tell the truth and you stop punishing your local brethren if they seem to walk out of line a bit. Just accommodate them, love them, let them enjoy the meetings. So if there's an official hierarchy, they've not got the best in mind for all their congregation and all the UK population, or is contributing to an imbalance in the country whereby the workers have to work harder and harder to make up for the corruption in higher circles, that needs exposing, because we owe it to the country. We need to be statesmen and think wide, think for all. So this article starts, fake news, Hales urged to withdraw fictitious claim. Lance says that Bruce Hales invented a story in which he used his henchman, priest, Garth Christie, with his wife Fiona and son Neil to defame him. This was before the court case, well before. Also fellow priests Roger Edwards and Christopher Stutterheim, ex-South Africa, now all from Leeds, UK. It's completely untrue to say that Lance sowed discord and interfered in other places' administration, was independent and led a party. Bruce Hales and the Brethren have a duty to correct misleading statements and are obliged by government legislation to uphold Christian principles themselves. See faith in practice requirements in order to validate their status as a registered charity. And then there's an article, it's time to stand up for free speech. If you want a good outcome, whether for a business, a government or personally, you need ideas and debate. Lance takes issue with Bruce Hales, Garth Christie, Neil Christie, Roger Edwards and Christopher Time for shutting down any debate with concerned PBCC members and ex-members. Lance first noticed this autocratic tendency 50 years ago when the Brethren gave no credit to his own father's protest at how the PBC were treating him, no compassion or understanding of the trauma they were subjecting him to. Lance takes up the cudgels, that's a bit crude, isn't it? And explains how he and his courageous team aim to take on the autocrats and bullies. Commenting on social justice issues, Lance Christie explains why and how his newly formed organisation will defend people's right to speak freely without fear of being persecuted. Lance, and it goes on, Lance was forced out of the PBCC in 2017. after he resisted an instruction to send £250,000 to the Baileys, his son Jed's in-laws, and stated in writing, in the control document which follows, that he didn't agree with all of the control that the PBCC leader-in-chief, Bruce Hales, was imposing over the brethren and their families, finances and businesses. The public are repulsed that families and individuals are subjected to this level of coercion in a country which prides itself on its commitment to free speech. And these aren't isolated incidents. And in the UK, there are many attacks on free speech. So, and then the broader context, if you write to someone within your church or organisation to complain about something they've said or done, they should reply in a courteous and respectful way. If they don't, contact us and we'll write to them too, and remind them of the importance of intellectual tolerance and viewpoint diversity. If a bunch of self-righteous bullies picks on you, we'll help you to pick on them. Bullies often need bullying back. I've not taken that line. It's taken us 6 years, but now I've won my court case. We need to start thrusting back what they've been thrusting at us. That's only fair. So that's, and then another article, this is quite interesting, I think, lies, deceit and populism. Some politicians within religious organisations can tie themselves in knots to avoid uttering something that later might be proven to be a lie. Others no longer need to bother. Alternative facts are the political equivalent of fake news. Michael Gove, minister, has said, truth has become a matter of clicks. We all do it, even when we ought to know better. The people of the UK have had enough of experts from organisations and acronyms. Populism holds that if enough people believe a thing, it becomes true. E.g., 2 priests barged in on Lance and his household on March 17th, 2017, and deemed him too bad to keep his wife, family, business, finances and whole social circle, i.e. the Brethren worldwide, which was my circle. This was then thrust on 55,000 brethren who unquestioningly shut Lance out of their lives. The action precipitated Lance's divorce from his wife and everything that he'd grown up to rely on. Hugo Rifkind, columnist for The Times, made an interesting point in an article entitled Truth Has Gone the Way of the Toaster Review on 24th of January 2017. This was 2 years after Lance was rebuked in the Leeds Assembly and just 2 months before he was shunned by the PBCC. Rifkind said, populism is inherently postmodern, even if its most ardent practitioners don't know what postmodern means. A motivated multitude becomes a better path to the truth than a tablet. Thus, Brexit must be a good idea because 17 million people voted for it, and Trump must be a safe pair of hands because 63 million voted for him. For the populist, there can always be alternative facts because there are no facts. Not anymore. There are only reviews. So you can rely on the general opinion of the masses, and in the Brethren, the 55,000. So if the leader says that I'm a heretic, if anyone dares to question that, they're chucked out because they're going against the leader. Well, that's populism, and it just means that you've got a whole system where the truth is that the leader, Jim Taylor, was right to be in bed with Madeleine Kerr at Aberdeen in July 1970. So they all believe it. That becomes a fact in their mind, and it was in mine, because it's the narrative is forced time and time and time and time and time again, and you believe that people will be truthful like you are, so you accept it into your subconscious and you defend it vehemently because you can't believe that anyone will be telling anything but the truth. Well, I'm challenging that. And, I've got enough about me not to just believe bullshit and lies anymore. And the brethren just need to come clean and admit to the truth. And I've written to all the brethren in Scotland via Duncan Hulbert. I've put a package for every interchange across the north of England and Scotland on the outside for all the brethren in Kilmarnock and Glasgow, for instance. All the brethren in Aberdeen and Peterhead. And relied on Duncan Hulbert to pass that on for the brethren in each place, because the Charity Commission regards each place as autonomous and hence responsible for its own administration, so that matters can be just put right in assembly and the truth reign, and happy days we could all reconcile because they got it wrong at Aberdeen. Easy. But if there's a whole superstructure of nonsense built up on that, it's very difficult for the truth to prevail, because the falsity has to prevail, the populism. So the whole brethren, don't you dare question Aberdeen. You're a bad man if you question Jim Taylor. So you can't have any proper dialogue, because it's all based on people. It's all based on leaders, a person, not on Christ, not on the truth. I am the way, the life, and the truth. So we've all got to reflect that if we're Christians. Fundamental, basic honesty. Square number one. Anyway, a few other stories, or two stories. The Aberdeen issue. Basically, I've turned the Aberdeen issue and the Leeds issue back on its head. I've applied the same principles to the brethren, to myself in March 2017, as was applied after the July 1970 debacle in Aberdeen, for them to think about, because I don't believe they've given a true statement. I think it was the statement was given at the time of the Holland Book matter. And then I've summarised the points made in my presentation to the Leeds Family Court on the 16th of November 2020, when my divorce went through and my assets were allocated, and the brethren came to the steps of the court and asked me to settle. So they'd run me all that way, cost me a lot of money, and came and settled. It was a victory for me, actually, against the system. So I've itemised the personal abuse, the spiritual abuse, the business abuse, and the financial abuse that was pertaining at that point. And exposed the lies that were told to the court about me and my family and what's happened, including Jed's accident, my son, in 1998, which was a major matter which went right across the brethren world in all countries. And then a scrutiny of the PBCC compliance to the deal they made with the British Charity Commission in 2012-13. So that they can take it to heart and start complying with the charitable status now. If they're getting £40 million a year tax relief, they need to be walking the talk, not deceiving the government that they're doing something they're not. Separation is moral, not physical. They made that was clear in the document, for instance. Well, they're separating me from my children, my grandchildren, all my brethren, for 6 years now. When I write in an appeal, I think effectively just shut us down, pull the shutters down, sound too bad. And then there's a control document which I handed in to two brethren, Bruce Dixon and Ryan Lum, Leeds brethren, subdivisional brethren, in November 16. They couldn't cope with it, so I had to shut me out. Basically going over the control in the system and how the narrative is controlled from the top. And the escalation of PBCC lies and deceit. And my letter to Garth in April 2022, which became a case of debate in the harassment case against me in January this year. And then some scriptural pointers for genuine seekers after truth. And that has gone into the British government, to Michelle Donnellan, and I don't think the fact she's switched jobs means that she can ignore it. She's got to pass it on to her replacement, say I know Lance through her husband, and make a statement. Lance is speaking the truth or he isn't. Please sort it out and contact him because he's been in touch with the British government since he was excommunicated through his local MP and through a Worcester MP right from 2017 and been down to Parliament with this. So it can't be ignored. It's a major matter, especially in the face of the fact that an early day motion in 2012, I think it was, led by Peter Bone, MP, secured the Brethren charitable status, along with a massive legal campaign. Well, it all needs reviewing because if religions are taking tens of millions from the government coffers, they need to be accountable and be honest about what they're doing and whether they are complying. It shouldn't be people that are chucked out like me that tell it should be the brethren themselves, because Christianity stands for openness, integrity, honesty, straightforwardness. And you know, top ministers there like Roy Simonson, who's apparently a murderer, has come out since, was ministry on transparency. We all went back. The latest is transparency. So we must be absolutely open and honest. And that, to any honest person, that affects your conscience. And you check yourself, have I done something to deceive anybody? If so, put it right with that person. Don't go to priests. Go to the person you've wronged. And if you've given information to priests and they've about evil things and they haven't taken it any further or come back with a satisfactory answer, ask them again and keep asking them and keep knocking on their door and keep going. Don't give up, because truth has got to win. I'm now going to briefly touch on the PASC Select Committee meeting held towards the end of 2012, when the Brethren's charitable status was under review. The article compelling the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church to behave according to Christian values was entitled Faith in Practice. And there are some significant subjects which I'm going to mention and read a paragraph out of each. Separation, worship, living a Christian life, compassion. And I remember the night I was rebuked, 9th of January 2015, awful night, Mark Bailey reading this article out in the assembly. And we had it in I think we were given it in our hands, and then we had to hand it, we weren't forced, we were asked very nicely to hand it back as we walked out of the room. So I was completely reeling after my rebuke anyway, so I hardly took it in, but it was all done very sketchily, I think very unprofessionally, and I don't trust Mark as far as I'm going to throw him anyway. He's good at trotting out the truth, but not so good at living it. And I say that by way of appeal, so that he changes his ways, he addresses his ways and gets converted. But under separation, for instance, nor should the principles that we adhere to ever result in us acting other than in accordance with the law or at any time in a manner that lacks compassion, care, or fails to pay due respect to the needs or vulnerabilities of others. A person who acts otherwise is not acting in accord with our doctrine or beliefs. That's so plain. What was said at the time of the 1965 commercial system was blown wide open was that the devil had taken advantage of a submissive state among the brethren. Very serious. And the Hales brothers, John and Bruce, were withdrawn from. And I believe that's still happening at the hands of the Haleses now. The matter was never fully dealt with in 1965. They were back after a few months, possibly because Bruce Hales had married Jim Taylor's daughter, and Jim Taylor had the last word. But nevertheless, to actually prey on people's vulnerabilities is predatorship. It's just completely against all Christian principles, just the opposite of what Christ did. So it's very serious. Anyway, it's outlawed. The brethren should never do that because they've signed up to this agreement with the British government. And then under compassion, as Christians, we are to follow the example of our Saviour, Jesus Christ, and show compassion to others. Proverbs 19:17, Luke 10, the Good Samaritan, 1 Corinthians 12, 25 and 26, 1 Peter 3 verses 8. In circumstances necessitating pastoral care, including but not limited to where fault occurs, Galatians 6 verse 1, considering thyself, lest thou also art tempted, so that takes judgment away, because we can fail. Then pastoral care is provided. When church admonition is necessary, due provision will be made for the welfare of the church member who is under review. This should cover emotional, health, family and financial considerations as per 1 Timothy 5 verse 8. The Holy Scriptures require the practice of admonition and discipline to reflect justice and fairness. Garth Christie, please note. So, they were saying when I was rebuked and shut up that I was mental, deranged. And that went right across the brethren to help, but to help them understand why I was so crazy. But where then was the care for my emotional, health, family and financial state? I leave the question. Another, no action shall be taken in any way to treat vindictively, maliciously or unfairly persons, whether within or outside the community, including those who are within the community and who are leaving or have left the community. Where persons seek to leave the community, there are hundreds, there's so many even after this legislation was imposed. Reasonable assistance should be afforded to them in terms of support and or financial assistance relating to employment or other matters where they have been dependent on the community for that support. So that's all the levers. Utter support is now, from 2012-13, has got to be on behalf of the brethren. I just cannot start to explain why they've done what they have to me. Reasonable steps should be also taken in these cases, consistent with and subject to any legal requirements applying to the persons involved and the human rights of the persons involved, to allow the continuation of family relationships where a family member has left the community, including providing access to family members, in particular children. There you are. I've been to Bruce Hales' house 7 times. I was doing a video, but Gareth, his son, came out and assaulted me and stopped it, just pointing out that I wanted to have to do with my grandchildren and family, again, Mr. Hales. But he's in complete and utter violation, as is Garth Christie and the local trustees of the HGHT in Leeds, of the very legislation that they've signed up to and are bound by British law. I repeat, the continuation of family relationships, including providing access to family members, in particular children. I want my grandkids to come and play with me in these grounds, in this wonderful house of mine. I'm just waiting. And so I don't want to go on. People can look up. The brethren should reread all these points in the faith and practice, like they did when I was inside, and give a copy to every single brethren member and insist that they are illegal if they withdraw from somebody and don't have any contact. They're actually acting illegally against the law of the land. And if it continues, it's not for me to threaten. The law is, it's not my law, but I say that every Christian organisation, if they get in charitable status, must be, they've got an obligation to be at least legal, but then God's law is far more wide-bearing than even the law of our land. So if they're violating the law of the land, they sure will be violating God's law, and they are. So, fundamentals of God's law are forgiveness, kindness, understanding, empathy, compassion, love, sense of the greater, conscience. All these things are wonderful truths that Christians hold, that if an organisation has turned into a ruthless business, they're going to apply business principles and cold, hard commercial principles instead of Christian principles. So they're not worthy of charitable status if they're a business. End of. And then another article which was read out at the Swanwick cult meeting run by the Reach Out Trust, wonderful trustees, Michael Thomas, John Tankard, down in, I think they're Cardiff or Swansea, down Wales. Wonderful people who've got a real grasp of the truth. Really mature men who stand on the pure foundation of Jesus Christ and can articulate it clearly. And I would suggest that the next meeting is the 6th to 8th of October this year at Swanwick. And if you write into the Reach Out Trust, I would suggest the brethren members go and listen to the testimonies. I was allowed a testimony. I told last September I was there and addressed the congregation as my brethren in faith and told them about the court case that was coming up, which came up in the Leeds court earlier this year. And I said it was a clash between a Christianity and a cult. It's a clash between cultism and Christianity. And so it proved to be. So they were praying and they felt a sense of support. And the Lord came in and we won the case. So this is the document that went in. Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, neither brethren nor Christian. You may have heard this name. There's a lot of confusion about who these people are. And surprisingly, it's not an accidental confusion. It's a confusion that's been deliberately sown by the sect. In fact, every one of these 4 title words is a lie and a deception. Brethren, no. The title PBCC was only adopted 10 years ago in order to mislead the public about what they are. These people effectively left the Christian Brethren movement over 60 years ago. In 1960, to follow Jim Taylor of New York with his new separation teaching, which deliberately broke up marriages and families and caused breakdowns and suicides. They have no practical connection with the Christian Brethren movement today. Christian, no. Christians respect the Bible as the Word of God, which governs their beliefs and practices. But for these people, their highest authority is not the Bible, the Word of God, but the words of their universal leader, currently Bruce Hales of Sydney. They only accept the Bible as taught and interpreted by him at any time. Therefore, the rest of the Bible is irrelevant to them for most of the time and doesn't govern their conduct. Church, no. These people claim that they are the one true church and that all others are false or apostate, including Church of England and even Christian Brethren. These are clearly the marks of a cult, and they reinforce their teaching and practice of total separation between their members and non-members and hostility against ex-members. Well, they would probably modify that, but that's what I was led to believe in there, that they are the one true church. This was said quite clearly, holding the ground for all Christians. So this minute cult, Christian organisation, whatever you want to call it, high disciplined, extreme, fundamental, I don't know. They are the right ones, we are the right ones, and all the rest are under us. So we're holding the true Christian ground for them all. Oh, really? We are the one true church. You know, all these facts are indoctrinated into the members. Plymouth, no. Plymouth, the place, has no significance in the history of the cult. Way back in the 1840s, Plymouth had a large assembly of brethren and came to be led by Benjamin Wills Newton, who became a heretic who taught false doctrine which directly undermined the gospel, e.g. that Christ had to die because he too was born a sinner and that he experienced the hot displeasure of God for this reason alone. If we believe this, we have lost the Saviour. For these reasons, he and his followers were shunned by the brethren and by other Christians. Are the PBCC saying that they are followers of Newton? No, they say that they're followers of Derby. No, not since 1960 when separation was brought in. No, he didn't separate families. He allowed families to be in different religions and live together because they're Christians or because they have got family duty to one another. Perfectly sensible. The Christian brethren, by contrast, have always lovingly preached the gospel, sent out missionaries, faithfully taught the Bible, practiced and exemplified a devotional spirituality. The shameful conduct of the PBCC cult have long been an embarrassment to the Christian brethren, in view of the fictitious link with them imagined by the uninformed and reinforced by the cult's recent deceptive adoption of the name Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. It is obviously important that Christians know who the PBCC are and who they are not, and are able and willing to challenge this confusion wherever they find it. A charity free indeed is in process of being set up to support those who wish to leave the PBCC or other cults, or have recently done so, many of whom who have been robbed of their family, their businesses, their money, their inheritance, and the only life they have known. Very serious article. And on the back of that, I had to speak, and I was very privileged to speak, and there was a lot of sympathy. One lovely Christian spoke up from the back and said, "Blessed are ye if you are reproached and persecuted for the name. May the glory of God be on you," or something like that. It's very affecting. as one and another stepped forward and supported my stand. And that's what Christians need to do. It doesn't matter whether it's me or someone else. It's not the person that matters, it's the truth that matters. I'm nothing, I'm just Lance Christie. I would never claim any title for myself. Sinner saved by grace, absolutely. But I am who I am. But we can't have imposters standing up, taking the name of God and leading people down the wrong path. Must stop, quite simply. And another interesting point is that I've written a number of books. I'm having to be careful when I publish them because I'm being warned by the legal system that the brethren will be on you like a bunch of vultures and try and find little points to take issue with to actually run you out of money even more, Lance, and finish you off and turn you into a wreck, basically. Well, that shouldn't be a Christian organisation. I will only speak the truth. If the truth doesn't suit you, sorry, line up with the truth. So my books will be the truth, and they go over events like when I turned up at the 2019 Universal Meetings in Sydney, and then was followed by a number of private investigators through the streets of Sydney and on into New Zealand, and how a criminal came up to me and told me he had introduced himself as a criminal and said, look, you've got at least 4 people following you. I could see you were naive, I had no idea. I said, well, I've just been up to a church up in Ermington. I don't know why they're sending all these people after me. I wanted to go inside and just state the truth. But he said, well, follow me, we'll try and shake them off, which he did for a while. Anyway, that's just an aside. And the books are commended by New York publishers. Most enthralling and thoughtful, narcissistic behaviour in a church, indoctrinated and manipulated, was of particular interest to the board and was found to be a comprehensive introduction to the complex world of religious abuses of their power and a confronting, immersive read. The board was impressed with the striking honesty of the work, not understating the horrors of the abuse. This will intrigue and fascinate the target audience. So, that was encouraging. And I'm just weighing up when to publish them. Of course, the honest thing, and what I would offer, is that they're published by the Bible and Gospel Trust, so that the brethren are informed. It would be a very simple thing much better if the brethren would publish all my books, so they can see what a hash they've made of things and repent. And that's an offer I put on the table again and again and again and again. But it comes to a point where you have to move on from appealing to actually sharing this problem with the wider world. And if they won't listen to Lance Christie and ex-brethren, hundreds and thousands of them, they might listen to the media, they might listen to the government, they might listen to book publishers, they might listen to a similar number of people who are outraged as they are in numbers. But, I'm just trying every which way to reach a situation where truth predominates and the abuse stops, and the hurt and the nastiness and the harm. And one or two headings which might be relevant. Warning. Why criminalise our fundamental right to protest? Are we sleepwalking our way to slavery? Who is trying to take control of our governments? What if it's all part of a bigger agenda? These are serious questions. Why are we allowing our children to be unsafe in our religions? Big question. And then any organisation or religion that creates more tax-free revenue than the Silicon Valley is likely to be an arm of the elite to control the people. Everything you know becomes twisted, becomes a twisted lie to keep you docile. That's the aim of lies and deceit, is to keep you docile, keep you confused, so you don't see a clear picture. Power must return back to the people. So the power needs to be taken out of the hands of the hierarchy and handed back to the people. That applies, I would suggest, almost unilaterally. The government fundamentally is a democracy, isn't it? So actually the control's in the people. It's not a dictatorship, but it doesn't quite work out like it should. And there's far too much backstabbing, politics, one-upmanship, all the stuff that's outlawed in Scripture. We don't want death, war, conflict and division, do we? Certainly if it's been promulgated by religion. Just think back to papal inquisitions, crusades, witch burnings, Nazi Germany, extremist terrorist attacks, 9/11. Yeah, all in the name of God to control the masses. It's not good. And then very worthwhile comments. It is obvious that the cult entity, i.e. PBCC, craves recognition. Their efforts can be quite ludicrous to the enlightened. I won't bother with examples which offend sensibilities. This is a strategic feature promoted by Bruce Hales, which affects all members, even though some might conceal their resentment. Bruce claims quite realistically that members are held by their benefits. They are proud of their undeniable financial success and their legal invincibility. This all confirms to them collectively that God is on their side, including their hierarchical structure. Criticism from outside only confirms their position. My conviction is that too much effort is put into denigrating what is so precious to their collective well-being, with the inevitable result that they reject any well-founded criticism. My feeling is that we should recognise what we honestly can as to their success. So recognise that they are successful in business, if only to get their ear. So if we say, well done, you've got £3 billion worth of PPE orders, silly British government, but at least it's quite an interesting thought. Maybe the strategy has to be that we've got to say nice things to get their ear. They're quite good at saying nice things to cover up the truth. It's a bit of an oddity, but we've got to find something we can commend, I guess. This can be done without validating their detrimental outcomes. So, mature people look at their outcomes. Caution. The worst thing we might do is to make it obvious that we are pandering to their craving. So just lead by example and maybe hint now and again. So we can't refrain from sincere criticism. All I'm saying is give credit where credit is due, so that they start opening their minds. If we just are seen to be lambasting them, they're going to keep those flipping shutters up. I mean, I feel sorry for them, but we've got to commend, and I commend the fact I was converted to Christ in there at a preaching. And so the word of God does get in. What we need to do is accept that, not just cast them off like they do as heretics. No, just appeal for them to be like Christ. So there is something of Christ in there. Let it, just give scope to it. And I'm afraid that means that the hierarchy should stand down and hand over to the lovely Christians that make up most of their numbers. And mutuality, which is each taking up a responsibility, will prevail and everything will be fine. Sweetness and light. And they'll open their doors to who they currently see are bad people, like myself, because the narrative from Bruce Hales about me will stop. And without others. Gerald Cowell, rival. He wasn't a rival. He was being sensible. His ministry made sense. It was a crazy separation law and all about associations and all that, which he was trying to navigate, but then upstaged by Jim Taylor. So just admit the truth. That's all we're here for. And then we can get on together and love each other and forgive. And yeah, you got it wrong. So what? We've all got things wrong in our lives. Hopefully we learn from our mistakes. The fact is that there's a spiritual battle raging all round us. It's the Lord's battle, and the outcome is assured. It doesn't matter, in a sense, who's right and who's wrong, whether you love or hate. God's in control. Surely we have that faith. And if we go off on a tangent, we can come back. The Lord tells us not to fret or fear. When wickedness appears to win because of devious plottings and conspiracies, God sees their plans and strategies anyway, made behind closed doors, no doubt. But the truth, as I said, is God controls the outcome. That may seem difficult to understand when we see the chaos and destruction, terror and distress around, but God will wipe away every tear. We don't need to worry. And I'd just like to instill that sense of peace into anyone full stop, really. Of course, if your matters aren't settled, you're right to worry, because God will have the outcome. Right will prevail in the end, quite sure of that. So Jesus said, love one another. That's just the simple daily task of all Christians. And let me quote Mother Teresa, well respected in history, across times, across religions. She said, people are often unreasonable and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. Beautiful, isn't it? If you are honest, people may cheat you. Be honest anyway. If you find happiness, people may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today may be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give your best anyway. For you see, in the end, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. Mother Teresa's helping us to get things into perspective. This is God's world. The law we live in, the police, the systems of men are all under God. They all serve his might, although it may not be recognised. So, I challenge the need. Why do we need to be greedy? I knocked this little chart up in 2017 when I've been chucked out to the exclusive brethren. Greed is intense and selfish desire for something, especially wealth or power. So greedy people want wealth and power and all the nice cars and houses that go with it. And then, of course, the contrast is generosity. I drew this up as well. Generosity is the quality of being kind and generous, showing a readiness to give more of something than is strictly necessary or expected. So it means we're kind, we're charitable, and we under-promise and over-deliver. When the Queen of Sheba went to the King Solomon, she said the half has not been told. That's what we should be like as Christians. People are uplifted by our presence, encouraged, set free, built up, because they know we respect them. And even Scripture is amazing, isn't it? Even love thine enemies. So I'm off the ground of Christianity if anything I do is with any other motive than love. Look at the way the Lord went to the cross supremely. And we'll come on to that shortly. In fact, I'll read it now. The blessed Lamb of God, he placed himself in subjection to God the Father, but not to any political or religious system. He honoured the Jewish commandments without being bound by them. The image of the Lamb can be taken to imply innocent submissiveness, but the realities of Jesus as the Lamb suggest qualities that are quite contrary. He was submissive only to the will of God. It seems Jesus knowingly submitted to many of the hateful manoeuvres against him, but he kept the initiative and submitted to trial and crucifixion at the moment he determined. Just let that sink in. Jesus counsels us to be wise as serpents, but harmless as doves, suggesting we should remain always alert while suppressing any instinct for primitive response from our Adam heritage. It's our privilege to reflect the Lamb character in our response to challenges which confront us. That's what Christians do. They take their inspiration from Christ. When reviled, reviled not again. When suffering, threaten not, but handed himself over into the hands of him who judges righteously. Beautiful passage of Scripture, which is an example for all Christians in Peter. And in Revelation 5, verse 5, Christ is introduced as the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So we're surprised to view a lamb fulfilling this role. So we should perhaps review our lamb images as inadequate and derived from primitive sources, adapted to fit our inadequate concepts of God. Modern thinkers tend to feel that Christianity is ridden with obsolete scapegoat notions which bypass fundamental issues. I don't think so. As it says in Matthew 26, verse 52, all who take the sword shall perish by the sword. Do these worded utterances by the Lamb of God have a deep meaning for us? Do they mean we should avoid needless confrontation? The Lamb shows us a different way, a better way, a way of more surpassing excellence. Peter Harrison of Palmerston North said that regarding the PBCC, their cultish tactics show psychological similarity in type rather than in severity to the practices of imperial Rome, in exemplary crucifixion of personnel who were deemed a potential threat to their dominance. They also had the lurid entertainment of witnessing from comfortable safety gladiators helplessly defending themselves against hopeless odds. It was a sport for them, wasn't it? All is a great and necessary boost to their collective ego, which underscored their awesome achievements. So there was incredible greatness, wasn't there, in Imperial Rome, on a material level. But to actually harm people, to boost their own collective ego, is awful. And if that underpins any system of man, it needs to stop. And indeed, the system needs to be, I would suggest, dismantled and built up again on a completely different footing. Because you should never cause suffering, and certainly shouldn't enjoy hurting others, and certainly shouldn't make a sport of it. So, we are applying to open a charity, Free Indeed, which has been knocked back because the Charity Commission, to put a long story short, are basically saying that they have given the Brethren PBCC charitable status, so they don't want to undermine one charity by granting charitable status to another. So this means that we have to tell the truth to the Charities Commission and tell them whether the PBCC are complying with the legislation that they are signed up to, that's legally binding on them. And if I can't open a charity because they're doing that, I don't need to open a charity if they are complying with the legislation, because the British government have already done what a charity would do. But I thought I'd just share the vision of the charity with all, so that you can either write in supporting it, write into the Charity Commission supporting it, or write in to me saying you don't think it's right, or you don't think it should go ahead, because that's really the proper way to do it. If you've got a problem with my charity, you should tell me, and I can adjust it potentially. So the vision is to bring the PBCC and later other cults to account, so that bullying, coercion and wrong church administration stops and is replaced by a true value-based mutual organisation standing for truth, fairness and justice. In other words, to liberate the brethren from a system of coercive control in order to save a great people alive. Quote from Genesis 50 verse 20. Joseph, which was his outlook all those years back. Objectives. Create a fair, impartial and compassionate culture within the brethren. Next, principles of natural justice, including free forgiveness to be applied to all. Next, forgiven sins to be expunged and all records permanently deleted. Next, re-establish direct individual responsibility to God as opposed to a hierarchy. Next, individuals are to be empowered to freely exercise their conscience and control their own affairs. The means to creating empowerment individuals will be the Elevate scheme, which is my business scheme really, to introduce wholesomeness into the workforce so that everybody is able to take responsibility for their own actions without relying on a management structure per se. Management's needed, but not as the individuals take up responsibility, they work to a framework which is good and demonstratively good to the business. There mustn't be any hindrance to social interaction within or without the fellowship. Funds appropriated under false pretences must be given back, restituted. Accountability and transparency must permeate all administration, especially finances. Mission. This charity has been created to utilise the skills of ex and non-cult members by creating one team which breaks down walls of separation so that members of the PBCC can see the value of a fresh approach and want to be part of it. All participants should trust each other absolutely to abide by the values of the 3 Fs: fairness, forgiveness and family. Goals. If the PBCC are willing to reform themselves, we work with them to promote significantly higher standards of care, education and enjoyment. Indeed, we could consider including some of them in our teams. If the PBCC prove themselves to be obstructive and irredeemable, we support current members in escaping the evil that is currently being practiced. So if the PBCC prove themselves to be irredeemable, that's not my judgment, it's what will become obvious. A superior system of care covering all aspects of life, emotional, psychological, physical and sexual well-being will be taught and implicated so that there's a viable alternative for escapees. A legal team to ensure that Bruce Hales and his family are exposed to the extent that they pour back the wealth that they've acquired in order to help disadvantaged ex-brethren who have been hurt by their regime. That is pretty much it. And I've introduced Elevate before, which really is teaching people in families and businesses to take responsibility for their lives. So it addresses family life, social life, personal development, health, attitude, career, financial and spiritual life. Very simple. And we break those down, those 8 items down into 8 parts. So it's 8, 8, 8. And then we then break those parts down into 8 more parts. And we bring training into businesses into religions, into institutions, and the staff become whole. I was a founder of One Medifund UK, and we introduced health into businesses. I'm saying health is just one of 8 things which are needed pretty much in equal portion. And so I'm taking that further and introducing wholesomeness so that people can understand whether they are in a coercive environment. They can step out and say, I'm not standing with it for this because I'm not in control. So everybody becomes in control of their own destiny. And I'm confident that this scheme, which has been born out of bitter experience, is good for businesses. And I think that businesses that become known to take people on and turn them into whole human beings, and the benefits that will come in their family lives, social lives, religion, outside the businesses, will actually be businesses that people want to work for. Because, yes, they will be making their staff wholly expendable, because the staff, a good boss, wants the staff to be better than they are. Narcissists will never allow you to be better than they are. Well, let's turn that round. And a good boss will be delighted if he's got a team working for him who are better in different aspects than he is. So he then becomes a coordinator, and he will personally develop each person that works for him. And goodness me, you will become far more valuable as working for a company like that, which has got your good at heart, not just thinking how much money can I make out of this employee, but actually thinking, how can I develop this person? A bit like going to church should be a developing experience, so you become spiritual. What's wrong with going into business and becoming a whole person? So in a sense, we're bringing Christ out of the churches. I'm not suggesting people stop going to churches. Out of the churches and into real life, into homes, into business. But the business environment is a good one to teach people morals. So hey, yeah, what's wrong with that? It's pretty revolutionary. But rather than trotting off to church on a Sunday, you can live a good life all week and develop your own self as you're at work. It's brilliant. I'm also hoping to start an HSE business, which I started when I was in the PBCC in 2016 with one or two kindly gentlemen, Richard Simpson from Crewe and Jim Hutchinson from Sheffield, Doncaster. And taking that up with a view to empowering people to take responsibility for their own health and safety, which is far safer than having an official coming around trying to catch you out if you're doing something wrong. So an app that people can look at when they work for a good company and take responsibility for their own safety. This is the way forward. It's actually a whole body of safety where there's no harm caused, because we've each got each other's back. We're not going to see anyone harmed. We're not going to see any families broken up. We're not going to see any businesses taken over. We're not going to see people's lives wrecked by narcissists who come along and decide to do nasty things. 4th of June, 1994, meeting at Clive Anderson's house with Clive, Lance and Ross Anderson. Ross quoted OS, just back from Australia and New Zealand. I wouldn't necessarily be sure that children halfway through a course at school should continue. Don't form preconceived ideas about it. If we don't do anything now, the Lord will hold us responsible. It wasn't a clear message. straight back from the Haleses. But we were hanging on to every word. At least it was half a green light, an amber light. 6th of June, meeting at Lance Christie's house with Mike Harding, Ross Anderson, Clive Anderson, Martin Burrows and Lance to set up action plan for education. 18th of June 94, Lance and Jed drove round site for school on Ring Road, West Park to consider a school site. Lance also considered Mary Lane, Yeadon for school or business premises. 22nd of June, that was a site I bought. Mary Lane was a site I bought next door to Mike Smalden's business premises in Yeadon. 22nd of June, 94, Martin Burrows and Lance and Deb Christie visited Mr. Philp, headmaster at Horsforth School, who warned us against taking our kids out. We were actually pretty determined. 29th of June, 94, Ross Anderson and Lance Christie visited Matthew Walker, Zoe's teacher, my daughter Zoe's teacher at West End School, Horsforth, at private Church on the Way school at Idle to get his benefit of experience on course material for younger kids. He advised, you must bring God into any education programme. We then visited his family at his home in Otley and wondered if he was assembly material. Inquiries about land and premises for education building was continuing. Lance and Ross exercised. 30th of June 94, Lance and Martin Burrows confirmed to Mr. Philp that Heidi, my eldest daughter, Zoe, my second daughter, and Adele Burrows were leaving. 1st of July 94, education meeting at Dataform. 2nd of July 94, this is interesting, at the care meeting, that's the monthly finance meeting where the brethren all assemble, Ross Anderson quoted Matthew Walker, we've been considering Romans and find that a renewed mind is a real test when we've been trained educationally. So Matthew Walker, who was seeking his way, trying to find the light, I think he went to the Open Brethren in the end, in Otley, that he said that they'd been considering Romans and the scripture about a renewed mind and said it's a real test when we've been trained educationally. So learning and a renewed mind can be contradictory. So very interesting. Double session at Lance's house where many brethren came through to view learning support books set out in the dining room. Ross Anderson presided. Brian Hanson was commissioned to sort out who should be trustees, along with Oliver Smallden, Harry Marrison and Martin Tennant, who also came round supporting what we were doing. It was stated that home education is better for our children than going to school. So that was very clear, and that was from Sydney. So obviously it wasn't the full thing, but it's better than going to the public school. Quite frankly, I disagree now, but it's all right me saying that now. I was just looking for instructions when I was in there. Not very clever, is it? I wasn't exercising my own discernment at all, or my own judgment. 5th of July 94, Brownbury Education Trust was formed. Trustees were Ross Anderson, Brian Hanson and Mike Harding. 13th of July 94, GCSE curriculum details circulated by Clive Anderson ready for next year. 18th of July 94, 6 a.m. prayer meeting in view of meeting that evening at Airedale and Wharfdale College, Ring Road, Horsforth, when over 40 brethren met, including Mike Thomas and Peter Mallinson from Doncaster. The talk was all about homeschooling. End of July, generally many discussions on educational matters, including contacting David Wilkinson and Mark Boyt, brethren who were respected and learned. David Wilkinson was a maths teacher back in his day. Lives in Aberdeen now. August 94, homeschooling started. Lance and Deborah Christie were teaching Heidi, Zoe and Jarl at home, starting with maths. It It was a massive responsibility. September 94, several families took their children out of state schools and began homeschooling, mostly using distance learning courses such as Calvert and Caseborn. Some tutor support provided for year 10 to 13 through Airedale and Wharfdale College. This was free of charge as for years 10 to 13, the college could draw down government funding for these pupils, providing they had 12 hours of tutor contact time per week. These lessons were delivered in a barn next door to Garth Christie's house under adult brethren supervision. Lance Christie is still pursuing school building in Low Lane, Horsforth, 20,000 square foot site next to Evans Halshaws, the same site that David Cameron visited, Prime Minister, on 21st of April 15 during the construction of the new PPT premises. That's when I spoke to David Cameron and he got me involved in the road scheme for Leeds and, you know, the motorway systems and railway. So I've been on the transport committee in Leeds. September 95, following on, excuse me, I've got that wrong. That was later, that was in 2015. I spoke to David Cameron. Anyway, September 95, following on from a ruling from government funding body, the college would only provide free support for years 12 and 13. Tutors for years 10 and 11 were employed by the college, but charged to the trust at an hourly rate. April 96, Lance Christie in touch with Bruce Hales and tried to introduce recreation and homeschooler games, but there was considerable opposition to this. Homeschoolers' walks continued through 1997 and 1998. So I used to take brethren kids out for long walks, much to the relief of the mums. You just fancy these poor women with husbands at work trying to tutor their own children at home. September 96, the trust commenced charging fees at a rate of £200 per annum per pupil. December 1996, Lance Christie agreed a deal with Leeds City Council for a site swap. That's on the site where I've built Brethren's business premises today. 26 of, I think they were finished in 2003, but they're still being used today. Sadly, I've been bought out of my business, and they said that the brethren said they'd walk out if I walked in, so I didn't get my business back. That was taken away from me when I was shut up and withdrawn from. But that's another subject. 23rd of December 96, Lance Christie's offer of a building to use as an education centre was noted in the trust minutes. That's a building we were going to build, brand new building for an education centre on the site where the brethren business premises are today. That's Focus Business Park, Focus Way, Yeadon. I took the Focus name out of the Focus Learning Trust, but it's easier to spell and seemed good. 23rd of December 96, Lance Christie's offer of a building to use as education centre was noted in the trust minutes. Repeat. 4th of January 97, plan of Lance Christie's site requested to be put on a board at the meeting room, at the care meeting. Dr. Burroughs was very much for this. Other brethren were somewhat begrudging, but going along with it. September 97, fees increased to £400 per annum per pupil. 97 to 98, the option to develop a purpose-built premises on land belonging to Lance Christie at Green Lane was considered. 10th of February 1998, David Bill visited Lance Christie's Green Lane site under direction from Bruce Hales and told Lance, "It is between you and the local brethren about development." 24th of February 98, David Bill phoned Lance Christie and Oliver Swarden on conference call to correct the misconception that Oliver Swarden had conveyed. David Meachard was advised. So Oliver Swarden had told me a lie that David Bill had said the site was not suitable for a school. And so I rang David Bill, and he said, yeah, Smulders got it wrong, completely wrong. He spoke to John Hales and had to put it right. 26th of February, Lance Christie phoned Bruce Hales and said that David Bill had been told that the brethren didn't know regarding Lance's plan and permission for a school. 21st of March 98, Garth Christie and David Meatyard were in touch with John Hales. 29th of May 98, jet accident on the site of the proposed business premises, meeting room and school at Green Lane, Yeadon. So we were going to offer, it was quite a big site, a bigger site than it's landed up to be, and we were going to have a school, a meeting room and business premises for brethren there. September 98, tutor support from Airedale and Wharfdale College ceased. The trust employed their own tutors. The learning support moved to a portable building at the rear of Lennox Road, Ross Anderson's premises. Early 1999, the learning support operation was moved into space on the first floor of Lennox Road. Students from year 7 to 9 started to attend, and a school uniform, a prospectus and a code of conduct was created. The property became recognised as a centre for external examinations. 2nd of July 98, Ross Anderson was appointed to function as acting administrator at the school until a senior teacher was appointed. 1st of September 99, fees increased to £600 per annum. February 99 to February 2000, correspondence between education trustees, Brian Hanson, Ross Anderson, Mike Harding, and Lance and Deb Christie over the use of the Green Lane youth site development finally culminated in rejection due to timescale and the need of ownership by the trust rather than depending upon one single benefactor. So the trust wanted to own it rather than me rent it out to them. 15th of March 2000, Lance Christie asked Bruce Hales if Education Trust deciding about sites was like meeting room trusts, i.e. that the brethren decide. The brethren collectively decide. He said, it's by leadership and not democracy. It's on the basis of sacrifice, unselfishness and leadership. The trust should be glad that someone else had done the work and provided and given the money. Education trustees are appointed, and over here in Sydney, the property would be owned by the name of that trust. Owned in the name of that trust. No one has a vested interest. The trustees make decisions for the benefit of the brethren's children. We've got 7 trustees in Sydney, and we like to have a trustee at the school every day. 50 to 52 children go to the school and 60 plus are enrolled. School opens at 8:20 a.m. and closes at 1:20 p.m. We have a good balance of trustees and invite differing views. We don't mind that. It means that we can make good decisions with all aspects on the table. Wow. You can imagine how wide-eyed I was. Thinking, wow, Sydney are light years ahead of us. You have a very entrenched official position in Leeds. Go a humiliating way to make an impact on it. You can't meet it head on. Father is just a local brother amongst his local brethren, despite his commission. It's up to Lance to develop a capacity to influence matters in the right way. Don't quote Bruce Hales, that's useless. 12th of April 2000, planning permission was granted for change of use at New Roadside, Rawdon. So that's where the school was sited. May 2000, property purchased at New Roadside and opened in September as a study centre. A part-time senior teacher was appointed. September 2000, fees increased to £850 per annum. 2002, Roger Edwards appointed as trustee and Mike Harding left the trust. I think he was out of fellowship at the time he'd been withdrawn from. February 2003, the Trust Minute book records that the trustees were re-evaluating the supported home learning to consider whether we need to move to establish a facility more like a school. The Leghams Trust expressed a willingness to sell the Trust a portion of land on the City Hall site at Branbury Lane, Horsforth. Council was taken and a proposal accepted in principle. 14th of April 2003, National Education Trust meeting to be held in June at Leicester. 17th of June 2003, National Education Trust meeting at Leicester. Ross Anderson had been taken on the 11th of June 2003. That was the start of Focus Schools. So he died June 2003. Late 2003, Neil Trevitt, Julian Salisbury and Kevin Frizzell appointed as trustees, education trustees. So Neil Trevitt and Kevin Frizzell were from Harrogate and Julian Salisbury from Leeds. 23rd of September 2003, local trust to be affiliated to the Focus Learning Trust. 8th of March 2004, Duncan Beattie submitted a BET and NET school consolidation assessment to Johnny Cruth, including incorporation of a BET business plan from Roger Edwards. Travel was a major concern, but it was noted that consolidation had been set on in Australia and New Zealand. By 5th of May 2004, 5-day attendance had been running at the school. So that's just a summary, sorry it's so long, of what happened. And I sent this report in to Mike, who sent it on to Roger Edwards. I never heard anything at all back from Roger Edwards. No, thank you for sending me the report. Thank you for being into the trouble of reciting it. And Mike Harding asked me a few weeks later, has Roger come back to him? He was shocked. Not even the courtesy of acknowledgement of receipt. And that's what's happened so much recently. I've been to Bruce Hales' house 7 times, sent letters. Apart from legal threats, I never get any courteous, respectful acknowledgement, despite the trouble and days and weeks it takes to write a good letter and get it perfect. I've been doing that through my life, and you know, we think that it's such an honour to be writing to the man of God that we spend weeks doing it and then it's just dismissed, or a phone message via somebody else. I think respect should be two-way, and children should be taught to respect teachers, but teachers and trustees need to respect the children. They've got their own voice, they've got their own opinion, they can influence things. That's what makes us feel good, if we can influence things. I used to do the extended interchange arrangements amongst the brethren, but I was completely shut down most of the time. I dared to bring it up in assembly, but we didn't like to be shut down, so I wasn't as brave as I should have been, because it's kind of a bad mark if you suggest that we go over to Liverpool for an extended do and Garth says that Bruce Hales isn't happy about relationships with the West. It makes you look a prune. Whereas your motive is just to have fellowship with brethren, and that's something I still support, despite the fact I've been kicked out. And then we had many years of walks, sponsored walks, and all sorts of events to raise money for the school. Yeah, I used to arrange those and enjoyed arranging them, and we found sites where we could park the cars so that after the walk, walkers could come back and be refreshed with barbecues. We had great times, great fun. And we had one walk along the Leeds-Liverpool Canal, really long affair. I think Ken Fulcher and Glenn Harding managed 42 miles all the way from Leeds to Falridge Tunnel in Lancashire. But I was the guy that organised them, and gladly so, because I love the young people. And roll on. 2008, we bought the site at Bramhope. and Bruce Hales got involved in that, and I was going to buy the house next to the stable block, which was going to be converted to a school. We were going to put a meeting room down the site. So I was really full on with it, all the brethren stuff. And we used to, we have pledge-a-thons. Here's a note. We all know the wonderful potential we have amongst us and the excellent achievements attained by all involved with the school. Pupils, parents, teachers, trustees, supervisors, caterers, bus drivers, and all the many other helpers who have entered into making the school what it is. We are all thankful to each other for everyone's contribution, but the stark reality now is that it also takes a huge amount of money to keep the school going. This is 18th of December 2010. As we have seen today, after focused grants, school trading and government tax benefits, we still need £509,000 to cover our basic running costs this year. At the last pledge-a-thon, we raised £450,000. We had people buying bottles of scotch for hundreds of pounds. So all the surplus went to the school. That sort of thing. And tractor rides and all sorts. This is just 13% short of what we need for 2011. So £509,000 was 13% short. If we can all donate the same amount, plus a bit more if possible, our needs will be met. For most taxpayers, there are now means that will legitimately enable the school to receive 25% tax benefit on your donation. And then there was a donation form given out. Thank you sincerely for whatever you can do to help the fundraising team. And again, that was me. And so on and so forth. In 2013, I was asked to be a trustee, so I had to fill in the form and got an enhanced certificate. I've got no police records or convictions, although the brethren have tried to give me them since, thanks to Charles Hales in Sydney and 21 brethren in the Leeds courts. Mercifully, they didn't succeed. But when they wanted my help at the school as to be a trustee, I couldn't have any police convictions. Any information held over from previous events? Nothing. Any children's barred list information? Nothing. Adults barred list? Nothing. So I was clear. And the brethren have tried to sully my reputation. It's quite interesting. In the court, the judge said that Lance Christie is a man of good character. Well, the brethren are saying I'm a man of bad character. So the judiciary, in the brethren's eyes, have got it wrong. The brethren are right. I'm a heretic. I sow discords and all this stuff. But I've actually been 100% and more devoted to the brethren and the kids, my own grandkids, my own children, all my life. So it's a little bit distressing to be chucked out without a fair hearing. And then we had a stakeholder meeting. So I was regarded, because of all the money I put in to Brammer Park Hall, which is the school site, I had a lot of money in the trust. So I was regarded as a stakeholder. I don't think we should delay. This is 29th of June 14. And we need to get gifts together. It is a matter of righteousness that those who have loaned or taken money out of accounts to be made available should be fully respected and, if necessary, reimbursed for lost interest if requested in the event that their loans are not taken up. So that's why in October 14 I went to Boston to see if we could speed up repayment because of loans, because people that offered loans with interest were instructed from John Anderson and Bruce Hales in Sydney to forgo the interest. So I felt very responsible because I had got the loans in, and then an order above me was given that they should not be paid interest. So I had to speed it up. But then I got a mixed message at Boston, and of course I was completely clobbered by Bruce Hales' letter to me from Boston, which I've gone over in detail before. So on it goes. Bridging loans for the sale of premises. Lance, can you confirm this is covered? Repayments of loans at short notice. These are management notes. Again, Lance, can you confirm that we have a strategy to do this? This was just before I was clobbered. And I had written, it needs wisdom to decide on a date for the York businessmen's meeting. The longer we wait, the more likely we will get buy-in from South Yorkshire and Humberside, which in turn will relieve pressure on businesses in our 4 places, and so on and so forth. So I was running the finance team to support the purchasing of the £3.5 million York school, and then completely defamed 6 months afterwards. And so on and so forth. And then we wrote into Bruce Hales, the school trustees did, on the 2nd of January 15, just a week before I was rebuked in full Leeds Assembly, about your campus. Very many thanks to your faithfulness at the schooling meeting at Archway House on the 25th of November. We feel humbled that we pushed ahead with the purchase of the campus in York without fully searching out your word and without making way for your objections. Wow. I wish they'd do the same to me as they do to Mr. Hales. We take full responsibility for this and would like to express any of your concerns that we have missed. Like you to express any concerns you've missed. We will be very thankful for your further direction. Moral value and worth. You emphasise the importance of moral value and worth in school, and that there was trouble in our campus as we speak in inverted commas. We have found trouble mainly in the area of students sharing music and video files. Some of the videos were seductive in character, although not filth. And that was a massive issue. I went to Ireland, and the issue that the York School had taken with the young people was mentioned. But it was minuscule stuff. I mean, what's wrong with videos sharing music? A number of sixth form students were convicted by your word as to the trouble and moved quickly to bring their matters to the light. Other students followed. So there was obviously a witch hunt and conscience reached and all sorts of confessions. We're thankful for your direct intervention in pushing the enemy back and are committed to being thorough and vigilant and taking final responsibility for maintaining the standard at the campus. Well, why isn't Bruce Hales vigilant about getting rid of evil, dealing with evil in his midst? Paedophile stuff. Newcastle. It is clear that the current travel from Newcastle to York isn't sustainable. Particularly for the primary students. Brethren in Newcastle are working to draw out the feelings of parents and students and are looking at ways to quickly mitigate the current toll of travel. They're also exploring the feasibility of a satellite learning centre. A further report will be submitted on this very shortly. Campus name and location. The doctor who was giving alternative medicine moved away from York quite some years ago, although we can't ascertain exactly when. This doctor is now based in Braco, BRACO in Perthshire. We wondered whether we should change the name of the campus from York to Bishopthorpe, where it is based just outside of York. We'd be very thankful for your further guidance on this matter. That's because when I went to Boston to speak to Bruce, he poured scorn on York, mentioned highwaymen and this alternative medicine person. So, of course, we were wondering whether we should have bought York School in the first place. It was a complete mess up, quite frankly. And Bruce Hales' instructions through me were never listened to because they came through me. What he says through Garth has to be. Well, that's hierarchy. I wasn't a member of the hierarchy, so I wasn't listened to. I'm not complaining. I've got through, but just fact, that's all. And then just before I was shut up, I'd been paid out in December 16 under Bruce Hales' instruction from Bramham Park Hall. I just got back the money with no interest, what I put in 2008. And Roy Harding was pushing me to sign a legal agreement. So now for the subject of schooling. Perhaps we should take a broad look at influences on the lives of children, because let's face it, we're very formative indeed at school age. And that's really setting us up in thinking a certain way for the rest of our lives. Fundamentally, schools are subject to the laws of the land and the policies that they set. So private schools have to be compliant in that connection. But actually, and I can testify to this from my own schooling in a public school, it's actually people that influence how you turn out. So there's a saying we used to say in the Brethren, you can judge a place by its leaders, because the people or the students in the school, the people in the community tend to become like the dominant person in that organisation. So let's look at the different aspects, influences of Brethren children's lives. Other families, in their case, it's all Brethren, so they're not allowed to play or have social activities with non-Brethren children. Not even non-Brethren adults. So the idea is, in having the Brethren schools, is to keep the children away, insulated from the influence of the world, so they can have nothing to do with me, for instance, now, because they're keeping the evil influence out. Fair enough, it's their choice. If the Brethren don't want me, I'm not going to force myself. But what I'm trying to say is it's very much the leader of the Brethren who's deciding who you can have to do with. And his henchmen have to enforce his policies. And then values, beliefs and principles, all very much dominated by the religion, by the Haleses. If they're dishonest, if the Haleses are dishonest, that gives license for all the Brethren to be dishonest. If they're respectful and make way for different views, the whole congregation are going to be respectful and make way for different views. If the Haleses feel that both sides of the story should be considered in any judgment arrived at, that would permeate right down through the leadership and into the lives and souls of the whole congregation. So, as I say, the law is kind of remote, but does have an influence over kids' lives. They know that they've got to behave themselves. They'll be in trouble. What's punitive, you might say, if they go too far over the line. And then academic, are you good at studying? Are you disciplined? If the teachers, who only have a small influence, I suggest, over the kids' lives, but if the leaders are disciplined, punctual, respectful, peaceful, avoiding conflict, forgiving. That helps because people can observe these leaders and try to understand them. So the values that they stand for will permeate right down through the schooling system. The teachers are a very interesting aspect. They are bound by brethren rules, so they're not actually free to be themselves in the full sense. They can't be wholesome. I understand that it's difficult for brethren schools to get the best teachers, but I'll come on to that because I've got notes of an interview with Lester Martin, who's the son-in-law of the man of God and has been going around taking meetings and very, very, one of the most responsible brethren in the church. And brethren from the UK go to him for advice, etc. Playmates, all brethren children. They go to meetings every night, normally. So they talk about meetings, talk about what happened, such and so forth. Other professionals, very controlled by the brethren. So besides the teachers, you might have other professionals who come in giving advice, giving testimonials from time to time. But they're all under the control of the brethren. And then there's sociology, racial issues, gender dynamics, and feelings about entertainment. The brethren didn't allow us to compete in sports day at school because it was too competitive when I was a boy. So that had a massive impact on my life as a youngster. And it was always right up to late 1990s, it was always a massive bugbear because the leader, Smaldon in the place, kept preaching about the three pools of sport and the evil of sport. It's the world way. So the kids didn't really have much chance to let off steam. I used to take them when they were homeschooling for walks and have games with them and relieve the mothers. But that's so, just to provide a bit of health and stimulation, because there's some pretty lively kids in there who needed to let off steam. And then the culture. It's kind of what's the culture? Like a collective manifestation of human achievement, isn't it? Based on what's intellectual. So we really admire somebody that's been clever and able to do what others can't do. And there's the whole social behaviour of a particular society or school, which is very closely regimented, very closely controlled in the brethren, and lots of segregation between boys and girls because apparently they go up to all sorts. So they're not really testing the parameters of suitability. Now, my problem with that is that if they ever choose to leave the brethren, they are not developed to cope with the outside world. Now, if that's deliberate on the part of the leadership and hierarchy of the brethren, that's wrong. Because the aim should be to develop children to be wholesome and realising their potential, being their best possible selves, not suppressed. And one clarion call of Bruce Hales, you do the doing, I'll do the thinking. Well, that's not education. That is contrary to what the British school system sets out. So we have a few problems with private schools owned by the brethren or controlled by the brethren. And then, of course, there's psychology, which is your behaviour, maybe unconscious behaviour. You don't really know why you're doing things. And your feelings, your inner feelings and your thoughts, are they made way for? Are they encouraged? And then you get this vying between poverty and affluence, don't you? which can all play a part. And church, of course, church plays a massive, massive part in a school's, children's development. So I'm just worried that the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church are suffocating children's development because they have to be in control of every aspect of their lives. So let's give children a choice and a voice in their learning. That's how they'll take up responsibility. Child-led activities. The countries, our countries, education systems all support this. Experiences to choose from that have clear learning intentions. Opportunities for the children to express their views, have them recorded and discussed. And then, of course, we've got to deliver the curriculum and give children the skills so they can be their best selves, as I've said, equip them for life, absolutely essential. And this is why I would like to introduce the Elevate programme into schools. So we're actually addressing every aspect of life and building the children up to be strong all round, so they can go out into the world, hold their own, make a public speech and not be shy and retiring and holding back. And same with religion, ambassadors for Christ, standing up for the rights of Christ fearlessly, standing up for truth fearlessly. This is to develop this courage in children is very, very good and needs to happen. So encourage them in creativity and problem solving. Don't give them the answers, let them work out answers themselves. Teach them about things like control, narcissists. Make them beware of psychopaths who would dominate them and restrict their growth consequently. Setting boundaries. We all need to do that in life, but we need to understand why they're set. Sometimes there needs to be some boundaries between home life and the centre, in fact, most definitely. And discussing the concepts of saddened behaviours and happy and acceptable behaviours and what the consequences are. So sometimes, boundaries have to be set between child-led activities and adult-led activities. And then measuring progress and assessments. Make sure everyone meets their milestones. Identify if they're not doing and ask why. Encourage them, don't make them feel bad. Identify what's needed to help them and, alert early intervention policies so that if a child's struggling, it's discerned by empathetic teachers and brethren trustees, and so on. Now, one thing that I'm concerned that the brethren schools, and maybe a lot of schools, don't teach, is that we have three classes of society: poor, middle class, and rich. So, the poor have expenses, taxes, rent, food, transportation and clothes. They have to buy that, but they get an income of sorts, small income. But then the middle class have the same expenses, mortgage. So generally the poor won't have a mortgage on a house, but the middle class will. And they may have to repay for their car, credit card payments, school loan payments. But they have liabilities, the middle class do, which the poor may not. And so when you actually think about that, the middle class work hard, make their way, get through life, pay the bills. But in actual fact, what concerns me is that the liabilities of the middle class are the assets of the rich. And that needs to be identified. And I'm not sure that the brethren children realise this. I'm worried that brethren are born rich and stay rich and milk the poor and middle classes. So if you think about the rich, rental income, dividends, royalties, very big businesses, expenses are taxes. Maybe that's all, because you're taxed on wealth. And then, of course, you think of their assets. Think of the assets of the rich. Real estate, stocks, bonds, perhaps. Intellectual and properties. Real estate. The rich have that. But the most don't. Very few, very small proportion would be multi-homeowners. So their liabilities can be mortgages, but in the Brethren, many wouldn't be covered. I wasn't. And I paid my houses off very quickly. And then, so on and so forth. But I want, reminds me of Robin Hood back in the day. He robbed the rich and gave it to the poor. I'm not sure it's not the right principle, of course, but the principle is there, the levelling out, if you like, between rich and poor. And it's not happening, as far as I understood when I was in the Brethren. There was something going on which I didn't understand, whereby the poor were always looked after, always happy, never on the breadline, and the rich didn't need extra money, so it was put back into the system. But now I've come out, I realise it's very much not the case. And people are targeted and ruined and run out of money, like they've tried to do to me. I'm not moaning, I'm getting through mercy, but I'm worried about others who have been chucked out who haven't had my resource. Very, very worried. And so it's how you are to the poor that is what you are really. Just to then go through to one of many meetings. This was a meeting by top representatives of the York School, which had children from. Sorry, this wasn't the York School. This was when we were going to build a school at Wetherby, but had decided, or were deciding, that it was going to house Brethren children from as far north as Gateshead, Newcastle, Washington, and Middlesbrough, and then southwest to Leeds and west to Harrogate. Wetherby was regarded as being a central location for these four places. I was never happy about the distance from the Newcastle kids, but nevertheless, we had this meeting. Well, I wasn't there, but it was a meeting between Lester Martin of Sydney, Penrith near Sydney, and Garth Christie, Robin Edwards, Keith Culmer, who's from Middlesbrough, and Ian Cooper. Nobody there from Harrogate, actually, or Newcastle. So, of course, Lester Martin asks, are the four localities happy? Keith Culmer, yes, they are, including Newcastle, who will have the furthest to travel. Lester Martin, is Hull coming there? Garth says, well, Doncaster will be the nearest, but they can travel south, whereas Hull is out on a limb. If Hull came, Grimsby could come too. That's quite a long way, isn't it, to Wetherby? So they were churning around the amalgamation of the schools, because for some reason, Bruce Hales, and I'm worried it's real estate reason and value reason, he wanted fewer schools than the Brethren kids travelling in every day. So they'd be on buses or minibuses for well over an hour, maybe up to an hour and a half, every day, twice, two ways. So that's, 3 hours potentially, both ways. Wasted time largely. So they agreed that they were considering for Newcastle, Middlesbrough, Harrogate and Leeds with one solution. And so Lester Martin said, we must protect our young people, girls up the back in the buses and boys in the front, and at least one parent on board. He was concerned, very concerned, that land around the school for sports activities had to be in the control of the Brethren. And then in breaks, you should split up boys and girls so that they're totally separate. We have a seniors room with CCTV right next to the staff room with the window in it, so they can't get up too much where we are. And then it was asked, what about primary SDL? And Robin Edwards asked, what about the need to give teachers 2 terms notice if they're going to be sacked because they're not happy with them? Lester Martin, reassure the good ones that you need them for the new school. Aha, excitement factor. Robin, what if they go back to the staff room and talk it over with the other teachers? Lester Martin, I wouldn't get hung up about that, Robin. Teachers, he says, teachers are a funny breed. No point hanging on to a good teacher that wants to leave. We had a situation and the trustees wanted to pay the teacher more to keep her, but our brother, meaning Mr. Bruce Hales, advised us to let her go. She'll probably be back, not happy with the job she gets. That's a bit of a kid, isn't it? I don't think many teachers go back once they're sacked. They're probably too free thinking for the brethren. Teachers are very insecure people and they have a pack mentality. Well, that's a bit derogatory, likening them to animals in a way. So these teachers are just, they have to be, because the brethren themselves are not allowed to go to university, so there's no qualification to teach. So they're not treated at the level of brethren. They're not given much autonomy at all. So these brethren dutifully asked whether Mark Mackenzie could come across to help in the school. And he said a bunch of guys could come over so that you can learn from our mistakes. So bring a whole load over from Australia to help the York School. And then Project 20 was discussed. And Unispace were going to introduce this project involving furniture, I think, and then do a plan and then go for it. So I understand that Unispace, which is the Hales' business, get all the orders for the furniture, potentially for all the schools around the world. More money for the Hales pockets. And then in April 2015, Mike Harding sent me a request. We've been trying to draw up some of the key things that happened in education in Leeds, particularly related to 1994. We've been having a lot in meetings that we'd let Mr. John Hales down. He had this concept for schooling and we'd been dragging our feet in the UK and hadn't done it. So they were streets ahead in Sydney and in Australia. Wow. So we had to have an inquest as to why we didn't listen to John Hales in 1994. As far as I can remember, we were hanging on for every word, but he wasn't conclusive. And whenever all of us more than went off to the universal meetings and came back, we waited with bated breath so that we could get on with the job. So that's been twisted. So can you please add anything of interest to the attached sheet? I replied, 21st of April 15. This was after I'd been rebuked in assembly, so I was under the cosh somewhat. I said, I'm not on the inside track locally, so make sure you get reports from others. But Ross Anderson put so much work in, but I think we'd have to admit that his exercises were blocked. So he was brilliant on the schooling. He was taken young, I think about 2004. If we were asked to knock up a report on the provision of subdivisional meeting rooms in Leeds, I'm afraid the story would be even sadder. So much lies was told when we found a site. And I reported that to Bruce Hales in Detroit in 2002. Many of these altercations over meeting rooms spilled over into the assembly. There'd actually many more sad facts in the locality from 1993 onwards, but would be unknown to the brethren. So all of us more than the lead covered up lies Over one meeting room site, he told me 5 lies, and Mike Harding and I had to go and confront him, and he just fobbed it off. So he was hierarchy, very much in control in Leeds back in the day. And of course, lies is still a big, big problem with the Leeds hierarchy. Garth became, so I said, back in 2002, my direct contact with Bruce Hales stopped. I'd been in touch with him from 1995 because I had a problem in my family with Yal. And Garth became the contact man, so he should be able to fill in a timeline of facts from then on, right up to the acquisition of Bramwood Park Hall, when Garth was in touch with Bruce Hales. Well, I put up the money for Bramwood Park Hall, and that went through in April 2008. I said, Garth, Richard Trevitt and Dave Michelle know the facts relating to Rudgate Wetherby. Garth, Ken Frizzell and Roger Edwards would probably know the facts better than anyone regarding York. Of course, the brethren would know that Bruce Hales asked Deborah, my wife, and myself some questions about York at Boston last October. That's when I was in big trouble. But he did say invite a musical band over from America and Australia and make money out of that to fund the school. So I wrote a timeline for the brethren, and it went as follows. September 1993, a few families took their children out of state schools and began homeschooling. There was no brethren school provision. These children were taught at home using various distance learning courses with the support of their parents. Ross Anderson, Brian Hanson and Mike Harding compared various books and other learning material and built a library to support parents of children from age 5 upwards. This was held at Ross and Rosie Anderson's home at 127 Southway, Horsforth. December 1993, Lance Christie looked at Hilton Grange, Bramhope in view of previous institutional use. 19 acres with planning for 60 to 70 units, selling at £1.5 million. It seemed too big a gamble for the brethren. Ross Anderson heard that Coventry showed John Hales a school property and he said, buy it. Mike Harding was also exercised. Ross Anderson suggested that himself, Mike Harding and Lance Christie and older brothers, Nelson Anderson or Donald Hickman, and a younger brother, maybe Robin Edwards, start an education trust. Local council was sought. Dr. Philip Burrows said get on with it. Garth Christie and Richard Trevitt advised caution. Brian Salisbury didn't seem interested. Ross Anderson was in touch with Coventry, Berwyn Daw, who reported that John Hales said to Coventry, get your thinking clear. You've got to know what you want and where you're going. No correspondence courses at home, which was quite a shock, because we'd taken our kids out of main school because of corrupting influences, apparently. Lance Christie visited Leeds Development Agency of the Leeds City Council, especially exercises for a school. Properties at Over Lane, North Road, Clarence Road, Lee Lane East, Gasworks, Cragwood and Leeds Road were pointed up. January 1994, a blueprint document of 110 pages of how to establish schools in the UK and how to establish government funding was issued from Australia, apparently by John Hales. Then, in the same month, Ross Anderson, Mike Harding and Lance Christie were accused of being in a party. Nelson Anderson sought counsel. We sought Nelson Anderson's counsel, who said it's not right to accuse individuals of being in a party behind their back. Nelson Anderson was a good brother I went to for Peasley's behind the scenes without telling Garth. It goes back to the 60s. Ross is at the end of his rope with it all, and Rosie is in tears. This is what Ross's father was saying. Hassle at the time about meeting rooms was also proceeding. Ross Anderson said he was scared to raise matters, e.g. who the education trustees should be, especially in a meeting. He didn't want to be divisive. He said it's best to be like Clive and sit back and not take on responsibility. That's Clive's brother, who's now a trustee of the Bible and Gospel Trust, probably the most responsible job of any, and also of the Horsforth Gospel Hall Trust, who withdrew from me. So then he used to go to sleep in the meetings. I remember saying to Celia Tennant, after Martin had died, lovely couple, she said after Oliver Smaldon went, and just before, who's going to take over and who's going to come forward? I said, Clash. She said, don't be daft, he goes to sleep in the meeting. Now look at him. Suddenly Clive came to life in 1999, and he would sit back, not take any words in the ministry meeting, hardly, and then suddenly he gave loads. So he must have got the nod. I think probably when Ross was ill and dying, he died, as I say, I think 2004, that he was going to be taking over from Ross. He's not a patch on Ross, quite frankly. I used to go to school with Ross. I felt very stretched, really, to try and keep up with him. Ross Anderson wrote a letter to Oliver Smaldon, which was regarded as being too technical. This was all January 94. I'd just like to start by quoting some reports from the Mail on Sunday, May the 31st, 1998, when Jed had his accident. A horrific incident. Sadly, it's been lied about to the courts the last few years by the brethren. I know exactly what happened. I was asked to take full responsibility, but we should be sobered, and we were preparing ground for business premises. So this is a bit of a session on business, but I just want to give a bit of background. Jed liked outdoor work. He was more like the Allen side, Desmond Allen, his father-in-law, sweet brother. He was a gardener. He used to work for Clapham's, landscape gardening. And then when we knew him, he was going around local gardens. So Jed was like that, and he made it very clear he'd rather work outside than in the office when he was 17, 18. So he and Phil Beaumont, a local brother, dug a deep trench in preparation so that the sewers dropped right down into the main sewer in the road below, because the brethren rule was that we can't go into the neighbours' drains. John Hales said he preferred direct connections into the main sewer. Separation rule again. So, just to the press, for 12 hours, 18-year-old Jed Christie calmly endured an ordeal of almost unimaginable horror. Entombed in a 20-foot deep trench, he had only his courage, his deep religious faith, and the efforts of rescue workers to sustain him. And then it goes on. David Griffiths, 57, a neighbour in affluent Rawdon, Leeds, described Jed's family as gentle, quiet and loving, which was epitomised by Jed, the eldest of 7 children. His nightmare began at 5 p.m. on Friday when he was helping to lay drainage pipes at the site in Henshaw Lane, Yeadon, which is designated for light industry and may also include a meeting hall for the brethren. We used picks, shovels, bare hands, anything we could. We just prayed that it didn't rain in the night, or the whole lot would have come down on him. Jed's parents, Lance and Deborah, kept a close vigil by him all night long. Afterwards, the chief fire officer, Richard Mox, I think it was, said to me, I wouldn't have survived that. You wouldn't, Lance, but Jed was strong, and he was very strong indeed. And it was a big ordeal for us all. My staff at Weavable were very good. They kept the whole place going. I was out of the business looking after Jed at his bedside almost constantly initially, for weeks and weeks. And I had a very, very close link with Jed then, and the way he comported himself was very fine, really. He accepted the whole thing, and the respect that we instilled into him for the brethren, and Mr. Hales came out, John Hales at the time. And yeah, so life goes on, and John Hales instructed everything should stop, so we stopped building. But then his son Bruce gave the green light a year or two later, and by 2003 we created a nice little industrial estate with premises for ourselves and Hardings, who were doing office supplies in those days, and a little unit which we've used for all sorts of things, the hamper business, Providore, school, students went there. And latterly, when I've been chucked out of my house by the brethren, I've been living there, living on tarmac, you might say, no garden, for a few years just to get by. Because once you're chucked out of the brethren, there's no pity, no compassion, no support at all. In fact, they drain your money, bring court cases against you, upon cases, legal threats upon legal threats upon legal threats. So your money is dwindling and they know it. They can't afford to have anybody leave with money. So those with money should ask themselves questions as to whether they're safe. If they disagree with Bruce Hales, they'll be out, but he will make sure he keeps the business. And, or at least, unless he's changed, which I rather hope he has, because the mix between business and family and the religion is very toxic. In fact, I did a little diagram back in 2017 illustrating that, which I'll try and find in a minute. But yeah, so come roll on 2016, Jed gets married, his in-laws move up to Leeds, and I never remembered signing it, but on the 29th of December 2005, just when the Baileys were about to come to Leeds, I signed a third-party mandate, which was never shown or mentioned to me ever again until it was enforced on me in March 2017, 12 years later almost. And basically we signed to say that a third-party mandate was given to Jed to intervene in Deborah and my private account if there was any, if need be, kind of thing. So, of course, I wouldn't have suspected anything. I'd have just thought it was the thing businesses did. But then when they shut me up, this was used to freeze my accounts. So you just simply, and Bruce Hales knows exactly what he's doing. You say to the bank, there's a dispute between the joint account holders, and we had millions of pounds. And so the bank does the safe thing and freezes your money overnight. I went to Tony Ferguson, the bank manager, who we've been dealing with for years. And he says, oh, it's a safe thing, because it means that your wife can't steal your money. Because there's a dispute, people often steal money. Well, I'd shared everything with my wife all my life. She worked well in the home, so I worked well in business. I was very successful. And we had a happy agreement that I work better when she does the work life, so I knew I'm coming back for a good meal. So any good man shares all he's got with his wife if he really loves her and trusts her. So that went on, and then of course there was a roll on to a dispute when Bruce Hales instructed Jed to take £250,000 out of the business. In those days, Mike Harding was working for me and agreed with me. He said to Jed, there's only £135,000 in your capital account, so you can't take £250,000 out without getting some very special authorisation from your father. And Jed replies, Mr. Hales knows I was going to do it. I'm acting on his word. When I told him there was a problem, he laughed heartily and said he knew it would be a conflict of interest. So why is Bruce Hales setting up a conflict of interest between a father and son? I asked the question. And then, because I was in trouble after Boston, this was before my first rebuke, so I was fending off priestly visits after, well, I wasn't fending them off, I was having to go through them. Priestly visits, can't go to meeting, blah, blah, blah. Jed said, Dad has had challenges raised regarding contention and discord, and I believe it was said he is still doing. Mike Harding comments, I know, and this is very sad. This is, and then Jed says, this is an example of this, and it is occurring in multiple areas. So what Jed is saying is that because Bruce Hales has said that I'm sowing discords and being contentious, that applies to me right over my life, in every sphere of my life, multiple areas. So Mike Harding bravely said, I disagree. On this point, your action, Jed, has caused the discord. We cannot say that because someone is not right, that everything that they do is wrong. But that's what the brethren do. If Bruce Hales says I'm rival or an opposer, all the brethren have to regard me as being completely wrong. And that's what the priests are saying. Just accept you are completely wrong. Don't justify yourself at all. Just fall on the ground and accept the humiliation of the fact that you're completely wrong. Well, here was I trying to run a business, trying to keep going, trying to keep sane when they were saying I was mental. And Mike Harding said, credit to him, Jed, I do believe that it is possible for the father-son relationship to be restored if you both take low ground. Your father is not an easy character to work with, but he does have real affection for you. Still do. I can see that he does not understand you. There must be a way to heal this breach, and I believe that transparency would be a start. I am praying every day for the restoration of the relationship. Look forward to seeing you all next week. Be free to comment whether you agree or disagree. Well, that's a different spirit, isn't it? Be free to comment whether you agree or disagree. And just to prefix that, Mike Harding has said to Jed the day before, your father and mother and brothers are all very upset that you started to move large sums of money out of the company without speaking to them. That's all of us. Lance asked me to move the £125,000 back into the Weaver account, which I have done. I did appeal to you, Jed, to tell your father. Not being transparent does not help the relationship, and I believe that you will have made things much more difficult for yourself. And Jed was in Sydney at this time. No, he wasn't. He was away. Yes, he was at the Universal Meetings, I think. Yes, November 2014. I trust that you are having a good time and can get good advice about your leg. So this was going on. And at that point, Mike Harding was supportive. But then once I was rebuked, and in January, just shortly after, and Jed went to Sydney that whole year, Mike Harding was turning against me, most definitely. And we had a real old bust-up, which came up in my interview with Bruce Hales in London, with all the witnesses that he drew in, Garth and Neil and Anthony Hazel and few others. Not sure whether John Rich was there. I can't remember now. But it gives some idea of the pressure that was going on. And then there was a fraud investigation going on. I went to China and realised the whole thing was in a mess. Went on to Sydney when Jed was there in 2015. And, you know, it's just a tale of poor business dealings. And Jed was going straight to the Haleses for advice. And when I protested respectfully to Dean, he wouldn't hear of it and leave it with me kind of thing, and work with Jed. But right through to today, there was a massive issue in the money that was due to us from China was not coming. And we insisted legally that I was informed as the founder and MD of the business, that I was informed that the money had been released. In other words, instead of it just being some woolly arrangement, that the Chinese agents handed the money that was due to us. But of course I was chucked out, and this is another thing. If a father is chucked out of a business without a handover to his sons and managers, they're bound to lose out. I had it in my head. I was the guy that started the business and knew the customers inside out. So it's commercial suicide to use a religious excommunication as a reason to excommunicate from the business as well. And it's very severe. They don't let you come back into the business. And they bring non-executive directors in. In my case, Richard Blackledge. And the board meeting after I shut up, he said, stay away, basically. So I stayed away. I could go on and on. I don't want to bore people, but suffice to say, in July 2015, Rhys Stutterheim hands his notice in to join another PBCC business. I think it was White Sales. Just at the point when Lance had agreed to bite the bullet and invest in the majorly challenging installation of a new SAP computer program. UBT representatives come in and persuade Rhys to stay at Weaveable by offering him an even higher salary. They persuade Lance to request that a non-Brethren woman who was in management takes a lower role within the business. August 15, Lance spoke to Dean Hales saying that Casey, Jed's wife, must not be an owner of Weaveable. Dean said that he'd see to that. Lance found out that invoicing to Tal Apparel was 15 weeks in arrears, and it was massive invoicing. And then in December 15, revised Weaveable partnership agreement purportedly executed by the three companies, that's Josh, Jed and myself, was introducing Josh as a corporate partner. That purported to remove Lance's casting vote without Lance realising. So rather than coming along and saying, Bruce Hales, and saying to me, Lance, you're losing your control of the business, you're casting votes, it was all done very underhandedly, and nobody told me that I was losing my casting vote. So it also introduced Casey as an owner and was all ratified by Bruce Hales. After speaking with Jed, Lance suggested to Mr. Hales that Jed set up a business in Sydney because he so enjoyed being there with the Haleses. This plea was ignored by Bruce Hales and his sons. January, Jed returned to Weaveable and promptly took control of David Stutterheim and the IT programme. He also resisted the appointment of Tony Jones, a non-Brethren accountant. And then April, Kiri, my lovely youngest daughter, started work at Weaveable. She loved her dad, but I was near the end then. She had no idea, although the rebukes probably told her a big story. By then I'd had 2. 6th of August 2016, message conveyed to Lance from Mr. Hales that he must lose control in Bramwood Park Hall matters and sell out. Also that he must be rebuked repeatedly in assembly because he wasn't fully accepting Bruce Hales' letter of the 15th of October 2014. So Lance was rebuked by Garth and Roger Edwards for disobeying them, and by allowing non-brethren into the gospel preaching at the Horsforth Gospel Hall Trust Gospel Hall. This was backed up by a rebuke from John Rich, one of the UK leaders. So on and so forth. And it's just this cutting off when you've been working all your life to build up a business for your family is just so ruthless, utterly ruthless. And I was just simply trying to make sure the business was running according to the vision and the mission that I set, which is all about honesty, fairness, and doing unto others as you've done to yourself, and having a good atmosphere and culture running through the business. And then of course, there were things going on which didn't help. For example, Casey barging into our house and telling, that's Jed's wife, telling us, "I am proud of Jed, and one day you will realise all the good he has done at Weavable. Cholerics like you are the only ones in their eyes that can do what's right. Why don't you be a Christian and thank Jed for doing all he has done for Weavable? You're a psychopath. Staff will witness to all the good Jed has done at Weavable." And then Garth Christie to Lance. "Jed has had to leave work because of you. You're always so sure you're right when you're wrong. You demonstrate an old-fashioned, out-of-date management style. It's all your fault. You can't blame others. You are battling on with a way of working that is out of date." And then Chris Stutterheim, one of the other priests to Lance. There are a lot of unhappy people at Weavable. You don't accept the rebuke from Mr. Hales. You're unhappy in your house, in your business, and in the meeting. People are not only unhappy, they are crying at work. I did speak to a woman about this. She said, "Lance, it's not your fault. It's just emotions. Women are emotional." But the brethren were twisting it all, that I was this awful businessman, you know. And then Mark Bailey to Jed. "You should urgently consider what goes beyond the secular area. Jed is immensely afflicted. Your characteristically tough approach will not get you anywhere. We are in Leeds for a reason, and I am not going to see Jed ignored and knocked back physically, mentally and spiritually. The changes you've made in the business represent significant demotion for Jed. They're not necessary. And Jed is being asked to acquiesce to changes in the business that he doesn't feel happy about. You go on the tack all the time. You send crazy emails. You're demanding and mental. You are an embarrassment to your family. You are mad. Get yourself to a top psychiatrist. You demean Jed. Jed has never felt pressurized at creative, just the opposite. So Mark's got this wonderful business where Jed's happy and he's so sad at Weavable. Casey hates every minute of working at Weavable. Get help in your mind and soul before you do irreparable damage. Your actions don't fit your wants. You have an implacable and intransigent disposition. Jed and Casey are distressed because of you. Submit to Mr. Hales's letter to you without resistance. And so on and so forth. Negative, miserable stuff. So, you know, I did some pictograms. Mark Bailey, you know, and then Garth, Mark Bailey and Jed's plan for the business and what they want. That's what I did just after I've been chucked out in 2017. And, you know, the pressure that these guys bring. And another illustration, Lance under attack from Jed and the team. Jed, I'll report you to Dean Hales. You're inappropriately positive. You're political. You make it hellish hard for your boys. You cause damage. You sow discord. You are a bully. You are unkind. You cause too much conflict. You're a manipulator. You're not delivering value. Well, it's the language of a narcissist. And I'm the father. I created the business. I didn't introduce Jed without any cost for conflict. I thought he would put his weight behind what I created for the family. I had a plan to increase the business to 25 million quid by now, with a massive net profit, 7 million. He just derided it, so you're kidding yourself. So, very negative thinker. And then, of course, while all this is going on, we have these super seminars going on from the Haleses. Every year, Vision 16, Vision 17. And I'll go over, I think, the Vision 16 one in detail. I asked to go to the 17 one. There's about 5,000 there, I think, 5,000 brethren in Sydney. But, and so I spoke to Andy Seeley. Oh, yeah, you should come. He rang Sydney and would. No room for Lance. So I just diligently took notes on the screen through the night back in England and paid for a few brethren who couldn't afford it to get in. And that's what I do. So in the Vision 16, held January 16 for the year ahead, for all the brethren around the world who were beaming in, there were 5,300 in attendance at the venue, and then 31,000, apparently, not everyone, I suppose babies and children, in attendance through live beaming globally. The aim was to challenge your thinking. Well, I just wish these principles, which are generally good, the brethren would apply to their own treatment of ex-members. Lloyd Churnside started off, he's Melbourne, I think. We're here in spirit and we can feel the energy and feel the passion. Have family goals. Exactly. They've taken my family away from me. UBT started in 2009. In 7.5 years, by January 16, there were 450 staff in 19 locations. It's the spirit of the community. It can never be broken. And then Mark Hind, King's Lynn, steps in England. When you have finished changing, you're finished. There will be no recession in the next several years. And then John McGrath, an Australian estate agent based in Sydney who knew the Haleses. They're in real estate, so I guess they do a lot of business together. Just stepped in and made the Haleses sound the best family in the world. And, you know, he was saying things like, every day you should ask, how can we do better than yesterday? Try and be a better person. And so on and so forth. But it was all very impressive when non-brethren come along. Converse with people, have an opportunity to say yes. Move past the no's to the yeses. The good is the enemy of the great. So don't just stop at being good, be great, you know. I took a $15 million house on. Everyone is afraid of such a luxury property. It's your thinking that lets you down. Routine and discipline set you free. And then a Dr. Tom Goa, G-O-A, of UBT, spoke on digital presentation. Then Jonathan Hubbard, I think he's Christchurch, but he might have moved to Sydney. All about data. Data is the new oil. With data comes knowledge. And then Charles Hales, the son of Bruce Hales, who raised a completely fabricated violence order against me in 2020 to protect his brother Gareth. This is Charles holding forth. Culture drives performance. What is culture? Culture is about emotions. Are people passionate or bored and tired? Culture eats strategy for business. All good stuff, mate, but you should be living what you're preaching. Employee satisfaction. Engagement and happiness is so important. Happiness starts at the top. Owners and managers, walk the talk. Know the staff. Modesty, be modest, be humble and work hard. Retain talent, that's the top priority for 2016. Well, they let me go pretty easy. I don't suppose they thought I had any talent. Reward and recognise staff, a culture of care. Find out the pets' names of your staff. Share your care. Flexible work environment. Everyone likes choice and freedom. Yes, yes, Mr. Charles Hales. I may get more out of them if I'm flexible. 88% of workers want a work-life balance and a positive culture. Hark, hark. Good employee characteristics. A good attitude, to be honest. Yes, please, Mr. Charles Hales. To be upbeat and positive. To be a team player. Yes, please, the Haleses. To be action orientated. If they've got a problem, before bringing it to their boss, come up with 2 solutions before you present the problem. In other words, do all the hard work and make it easy for your boss. And then Greg Hales, another of these famous sons of Bruce, embrace change. Change often. I failed, so I asked Richard Garrett, I think he's Melbourne as well, for help. On recruitment, we must broaden our horizons. Give scope and rope to our employees. What about giving that to the brethren? Maximise potential. Give before you take. Share. Wow. Wow. There's a lot of money going up to the Haleses. It's all pretty much give from what I hear. I'm not seeing the hundreds of millions coming back down that I'm seeing going up. And then Bruce Hales comes in all his glory. I'm very humbled by the applause. Everyone was clapping, you see. Wow, the great man was entering the stage. What is needed is clear straight lines in which to operate and get ahead. Get the initiative and stop the confusion. That's exactly what I'm doing. I've created Elevate so that individuals can take the initiative and be in control of their own destiny, so that Bruce Hales can't just come along and withdraw from them and destroy their lives. So this is the problem I've got with the Haleses. They say wonderful things, but they're not living them. And then goal setting and romances. I had some. There were a variety of them. I had to give it up because I was losing focus. Don't let unnecessary issues distract you from your real focus. And listen to this. Listen to the criticism. This is Bruce Hales himself. Young people need encouragement and a compliment. You can't live on compliments all your life. Fan clubs are fickle. You want persons that will tell you the truth about yourself. Well, that's exactly what I'm doing, Mr. Hales. You've got to take it both ways. If you say you want people that tell the truth about yourself, that's exactly what I'm doing. Truth reigns, not you, not persons. And then bit on forecasting and then scrutiny. Never think that your judgment is the best. He's been busy telling people, when I was in fellowship, I don't trust Lance's judgment. Well, you said yourself, never think that your judgment is the best. Open yourself up for independent scrutiny. People will tell you from a high up, drilled down perspective what they think of it. An open book policy equals refinement. Mr. Hales, please, open yourself up for scrutiny. Do what you're asking others to do. Do it yourself. Make yourself accountable to the people, to the population of Australia, to the brethren that go to your churches across the world. He goes on. I have 6 doctors, 2 GPs, a cardiologist, a cardiac doctor, a gastroenterologist, and 2 endocrinologists. Then he gets a full picture of what is going on. I don't want to deceive myself. I want to know. It's a mistake to deceive yourself, whether it is financially or your physical well-being. Then you can take issue with yourself. This is me. I may try to put on a show, but get the true picture of yourself, and then you can set yourself an improvement. Don't trust your own judgment. Don't try and be your own doctor. If you are really well, come right up here now. So he's really saying to all these 5,300 people, if any of you are taking the ground of being really well, come up here now. Nobody comes, of course. So this humble man is keeping people in a humble state. And, it goes on. Believe in maximising your potential. A hard, loyal toiler does not get overlooked. That's what I've been all my life. No, I'm not overlooked. I'm pretty much targeted these days. Look after your boss, look after your principal, look after your staff. So put your heart and soul into your boss's business without distractions. That's pretty much what it is in there. And this is my power struggle pictogram, which I referred to earlier, just showing where you've got conflict between Jed and myself. So I was representing We Available the business, Jed the community, which is the brethren. And then there was an ex-employee who wasn't in the brethren who was bringing cases against me. So there was a massive tug of war, and it's so toxic. And when you realise that Bruce Hales and his hierarchy are supporting it, it becomes tough fighting against the whole brethren position in effect, because they all do what Bruce Hales says. So then, of course, all the legal wranglings start, and the solicitors for Jed and my wife Deborah basically say on the 6th of October 2017, Lance's prospects of success are, to say the least, not great. In other words, give up now. There is no positive case for Lance. Your client, sadly, should leave the business and be paid out. On any view, he is in breach of the express terms of the partnership agreement, is divorcing his wife, and there is a gaping chasm between him and the rest of the family in the business. That was caused by Bruce Hales. And of course, the lawyers are dancing to his tune. They're getting paid. At a board meeting, it was severely disrupted, such that the other partners considered it to be entirely counterproductive to normal business discussion. That's because with my lawyer's backing, I went into 2 or 3 shareholder meetings because I was still a director. And of course, I raised issues about the way the brethren were running down the business. Dick Blackledge said the business was heading for a train smash. No, it wasn't. It should have been, it was heading for a 25 million turnover when I was in charge, backed up by a proper government growth scheme. So I couldn't say you're lying, Blackledge, but he was. Lance wishes to attack the 2012 agreement and the 2015 agreement, both of which he agreed and signed under coercion, but set out no reasoned basis for ever. Well, we took that all the way and paid a fortune, and it was judged that they were illegal because they weren't in line with the equality law. So these vicious lawyers are trying to get you to give up, bully you into giving up, whereas I believe in standing for right and fairness and my own rights and justice. I shouldn't have to collapse just because I've got 55,000 people onto me. He spent many tens of thousands of pounds fighting this on legal costs in a short period of time. We estimate £60,000 at that point. Lance's contribution was a mix of nostalgia, inaccurate recollections, and demonstration of lack of knowledge of how the business functions and needs to operate. It is evident that he simply does not understand the financial and operational structure of the business. Thank you very much. It's just unbelievable. I've had to say, I believe when you're running a business with overseas functions and operations in China, India, Turkey, Holland, you do have to understand finances. And I ran my finances very carefully, but was generous. We had people running through our house, and I paid the staff well. I'm sorry, but that's just defamatory, that comment. And it's untrue. I think I've got a measure of intelligence. They were telling me, as well as all this, that I was mental. Oh yeah, this was after I'd left, of course. This is when they withdrew from me at this very point. They're sending me this legal letter. So the mix, the toxic mix between brethren and business is massive and massively stifling to the progress of a business and psychologically destroying for the individual concerned. Lance claims that one of his objectives is to restore his relationship with his children. He has failed to convince us of his sincerity in this desire. And in reality, the relationship has forever changed. So it is hoped that the early resolution of this dispute and the avoidance of hugely damaging court proceedings will enable a relationship to recommence, although inevitably there will be caution and time will be required. So this is the carrot they're dangling, that if I just give up then, I'd be able to have a relationship with my family. Well, do you really think that would have happened? Was that honest? Of course it wasn't. He even declared he was peaceable. This is me, not litigious. All the litigation's been brought by the brethren and my sons and my wife, not me. I've had to answer, had to defend myself. And we would wish to take him at his word. This is much needed progress. In other words, just agree with everything they're saying. Regrettably, it has to be said that he evidently resents Jed having the more prominent role in the business, which the partners granted to Jed with the full approval of your client. Pardon? Pardon? He has an issue over Jed's transparency. He wants to go to court to expose the brethren. We don't, obviously these lawyers clearly didn't agree with that. The brethren, as far as I'm concerned, were the elephant in the room, but they would not. They were insisting that it was a pure family dispute. And Jed and I had virtually come to blows, but hated each other so much. Nothing to do with the brethren. How come I was being withdrawn from when this was written? I leave the question. Your client considered that the resolution to exclude him was illegal and invalid. It was later proved that it was, and referred us to you for an explanation of that assertion. We want to make it clear that following the chaotic experience of the last board meeting, with 3 UBT lawyers there, family, Jed and Josh, it would be entirely inappropriate for your client to attend again, and the board meeting will not proceed if he is in attendance. So I turned up for the next board meeting, and David stood time answered the phone on the door, and they won't let me in. He said, oh no, there's no board meeting here. I said, well, where is it then? Oh, elsewhere. Will you tell me where it is? No. So this is the man who I paid well, was in the business, was disrupting it, and a trustee of the Horsforth Gospel Hall Trust who withdrew from me. And they'd come over as a young boy from South Africa, and the South Africans just turned against me. You know, stabbed me in the back. I put myself out to set them up. I just don't get it. And then an ex-brother business advisor, I submit that the marriage would not have broken down other than for the strict rules of the church which excommunicated you. So that's the other side of the story. So the brethren are denying any involvement. The lawyers are saying it's all because of bad Lance and bad Deborah, or bad Lance and good Deborah. And this person said, you did not voluntarily walk out of the marriage. Absolutely. You are rightly attacking the church as the cause of the separation of husband and wife. So Hales needs to start listening to other points of view. And so does Garth and all these people that have excommunicated me. And then, of course, the whole thing goes on, and there are all sorts of court papers, which are very sad, really. My wife didn't understand the business and how it ran. She didn't understand money. She left all that to me. And then, but they shoved her in the business as marketing director when they shoved me out. Well, how could that be good for the business? I understood sales and marketing, and it was generally widely acknowledged I was a good salesman. But I ran the business from a sales perspective, not from a UBT accountant's controlling perspective. And I liked my staff to thrive and enjoy labels. Designing labels for clothes is an exciting business. But with all this political stuff going on, it makes the whole thing sad. So my wife's submission to the court. The case concerns a family breakdown. This family can no longer continue to work together. The husband has regrettably sought to make the central issue in this case the fact that he is no longer a member of the Brethren Church and has been wrongly excluded from the family business. Absolutely. Once the husband is able to acknowledge and accept that he cannot return to the family business, this case is capable of a sensible and timely resolution. The difficulty in this case is that the husband seems unable to acknowledge the reality of the position in which he finds himself. Yeah, I wasn't withdrawn from rightly, and that triggered me to leave the business and the home and everything I knew. What this case cries out for is a solution that will enable both parties to achieve a clean break. It was all about breakup. It is hoped that this neutral evaluation effort to resolve things will enable the husband to see that his proposals to return to the business, with each party retaining their shares, will not be an outcome of these proceedings. It would be impossible for him to return to the business and have the means to make a lump sum payment to his wife. So, done and dusted, he's out, no way back. The husband has sought to use these proceedings to trail his agenda in relation to the church, while the wife has sought to provide a neutral account of the family breakdown. Oh, how impartial, how lovely. This is regrettable that the husband has chosen to act in this way, given that this is a neutral evaluation. So these brethren are so beautifully neutral, my wife, as one of the brethren, but this awful husband is causing all the trouble. Given the case he now seeks to advance, that he was wrongfully excluded from the family business, his failure to do so, to provide reasons, is inexplicable. This is particularly the case given that the pursuit of commercial proceedings would never achieve the outcome he says he wanted, namely to return to the business. One conclusion we reach is that the husband did not wish to return to the business, but rather sought to use the commercial proceedings as a vehicle to air in public his disagreement with the church. This may well explain the manner in which he pleaded his case in the commercial proceedings and the fact that he pursued the commercial proceedings for so long. It is telling that he has refused to agree to confidentiality clauses in any order in these proceedings and now makes reference to press interest. Regrettably, rather than agreeing with us unilaterally, the husband sought to impose conditions on a stay of the commercial proceedings, including a requirement that the wife was to give an undertaking that she and Montgomery Director Services should resign as directors of Focus Branding, which was my wife and my little entity controlling the business, and so on. The husband suggests that the wife abandons her case. Absolutely. The husband has raised the issue of loans repaid to the wife, and suggests that she has not provided full and frank disclosure of these monies. I used to lend brethren money to brethren who were struggling interest-free, and they were all called in because they excommunicated me. So my wife got them back and had to give me half. It's so sad that people's loans that brethren are relying on have to be called in because they've excommunicated me. Because I gave the loans. I wouldn't have stopped them. So it goes on and on and on. And the brethren illegally cancelled my directorship at Company's House when I was still a director. And it says, when the rhetoric of the husband's case is removed and the invective against the brethren is erased, this case is about achieving a fair outcome for this family. Whilst it is regrettable that this family can no longer work together, the hard fact is that they cannot. The wife and the children will not work with the husband, and the evidence suggests that neither will a number of key employees. So I put a brethren management system in. If the husband were to return, it would sound the death knell for this business, given that the success of the business is the only means by which the wife could receive her share of the assets. It is clear that the husband's retention of the shares cannot and will not be an outcome to these proceedings. Fundamentally, the issue at the heart of these proceedings is the husband's determination to pursue an agenda in relation to the church and not the orderly end of his marriage. There is no good reason why the husband should decline to protect the privacy of this family from press intrusion. It is deeply troubling that he makes veiled threats of public hearings and press attention in his note, and this serves to underline the motivation behind these proceedings and the commercial litigation. I do think that the press is a provision, God's provision. If things are going badly against somebody, go to the press. Let the world know. Because if the world thinks this is bad, the brethren might stop doing it. It's just carving up families. It's wrong. I do think it needs to go to the government. Should be aired in Parliament. The Plymouth Brethren Christian Church break up families. Are we happy to give charitable status to an organisation that does this when they've agreed to terms and conditions in the faith and practice document which instruct them to do the opposite? It is readily apparent from the narrative above that the issues in this case should have been addressed by the family court within the financial remedy proceedings. Commercial proceedings should never have been issued, and all of the costs that have been incurred by reason of the husband's pursuit of the commercial proceedings have been entirely wasted. The husband's attempts to justify the reasons why the commercial proceedings were necessary have no merit in a case which clearly concerns a family business and the breakdown of a marriage. The husband continued to oppose a stay of the commercial proceedings and persisted in his argument that the validity of the clauses within the shareholders' agreement had to be determined before the family court could determine the financial remedy claims. The judge heard submissions and was satisfied that commercial proceedings were not necessary, provided that the wife did not seek to preclude a share transfer to the husband by reason of the clauses in the shareholders' agreement relating to the brethren. It is apparent from the matter set out above that the husband embarked upon costly commercial proceedings which should never have been issued. It would be open to the wife to seek her costs, thrown away by reason of the husband's unnecessary litigation. No, they were illegal, and we proved that in the end, but it cost me a fortune. This should never have been supported or even suggested by a church. It's completely wrong. Quite frankly, I should have the business back. It's just unbelievable. And I think the whole world, I mean, I've heard of hostile takeover bids and all that, but this is completely unwarranted. And it's a build-up of hatred because I'd become a threat, apparently, in the religion. So they had to get me out. It's just not right. It's simply not right. And, you know, why should asking to go and see one of the employees who are non-brethren at this time be deemed harassment when I'm invited along? You know, the whole thing has been backed up by Kingsley Napley, vicious lawyers in London, who stand like a battalion against me in court and wherever, just determined that the brethren win. And my lawyers say that if it's sad, it's heartbreaking to go over it, but they were just determined to take everything they could off me to weaken me, and that's not what the legal system's for. The legal system shouldn't, in Christianity, you shouldn't need a legal system because Scripture's very clearly, if you've got a problem with somebody, go and speak to him. Well, the brethren will not speak to me. They've got this big wall up. They say I'm a heretic, and none of the brethren want to speak to me. But Scriptures, you do go and speak to your enemies. You do go and speak about matters to resolve them. And if you've got the guts to do that, they resolve themselves. So the whole thing is very sad because they try and turn honest efforts to communicate with a view to a resolution into sexual harassment claims when there's no sex at all. And there's no training in the brethren as to how to handle life when you're excommunicated. Not at all. It's all about staying in there and setting the whole culture up so that you don't ever dare to leave. Well, that can't be right. And, comment here, it's very obvious that Kingsley Napley are very, very responsible. I mean, if they can gang up and get the Crown and the police to gang up against an innocent working for a billionaire organisation, it's clear that they're doing exactly what everyone else thinks they're doing. Keep giving them advice, that's the brethren, and they'll keep paying them. Nothing less, nothing more. It's all about money. Righteousness, justice, fairness goes out of the window. If you've got the money, and we need to look into whether the money that the brethren pay on these cases is coerced out of congregations. Certainly I had no idea that the money I generously gave to the brethren when I was in there until 2017 was being used to ruin people financially and start massively expensive legal cases against them. I perhaps should have known and realised, but I'm a positive thinker. I just don't think people do these things. I think people are as fair as I am and as kind and generous as I am. I don't expect there to be predators in a religion. So these are all things that have happened, and I'm determined they should stop, and there should not be any mergers, acquisitions influenced by religion. There shouldn't be any hostile takeovers or anything like that, and families should be supported. Family is far more important than religion. Religion should never break up families, not at all, ever, ever, ever. If there's problems in families, and that does happen, a father will try and resolve it in as peaceful way as he can. He might draw on the church, but the motive should be healing every time, like Christ. He had nothing in his heart but the best for all. May hierarchies and religions and cults take heed, take note and change. Bruce Hales and his sons preaching change at the Vision 16 seminar. They need to change themselves. Understand the harm and hurt you're causing. Oh, you're making loads of money. That won't go down the grave with you. And no, righteousness will win. Justice will win, not money at the end of the day. So you might as well give to the poor. Have you ever thought about becoming poor yourself? Oh no, we're born with still the spoons in our mouths and we're all swanning around having big houses and big cars. Think again. That's not true happiness. It's make-believe. It's pretense. It's materialism. It's not according to Scripture.